The sound cut through Union Station like a blade through silk. One moment, thousands of travelers rushed past in their usual chaos, pulling suitcases, checking phones, grabbing coffee. The next moment, silence. Complete, absolute silence. In the center of the grand hall, beneath the vaulted ceilings and historic chandeliers, a homeless man stood with a viola pressed against his shoulder. His clothes were torn, his face weathered by years on the street, his hair matted and gray. But his hands, those hands moved across the strings like they were painting light itself into the air. The music wasn't just beautiful, it was impossible. It was the kind of sound that shouldn't exist outside concert halls, outside the world's greatest orchestras. Yet here it was pouring from a man who looked like he'd been forgotten by the world. 500 people stood frozen. Phones rose, slowly recording, but even the act of capturing the moment felt secondary to simply witnessing it. A woman in the front row had tears streaming down her face. A businessman in a $1,000 suit had stopped mid-stride briefcase hanging forgotten from his hand. Security guards who'd been walking over to move the homeless man along now stood at the edge of the crowd, equally transfixed. The piece was Brahms. Violin Sonata No. 1, transcribed for viola. Every note carried the weight of a lifetime. Every phrase spoke of loss and longing and something deeper than words could ever capture. This wasn't a performance. This was a confession. This was prayer. This was the sound of a soul trying to remember what it meant to be human. The homeless man's eyes were closed. Tears ran down his cheeks, cutting clean paths through the grime. His body swayed with the music, and for these few minutes he wasn't homeless. He wasn't hungry or cold or forgotten. He was exactly what he'd always been before the world had taken everything from him. Before we go further, you need to understand something. This moment, this impossible, beautiful moment, didn't happen by accident. The man holding that viola, the man the world had dismissed as just another face in the crowd of the invisible, was once called the future of American classical music. His name was Dominic Walker. And 6 hours earlier, he'd woken up on a bench in this same station, certain he would die without ever touching a musical instrument again. What happened next didn't just go viral. It didn't just break the internet. It shattered everything Dominic thought he knew about loss, about redemption, and about the son he believed he'd buried 4 years ago. But to understand this moment, we need to go back. Back to 6 hours before this performance. Back to a morning when Dominic Walker was still just another invisible man in a city that had learned not to see him. 6 hours earlier, Union Station looked different. The morning rush was just beginning, that peculiar hour when the building stood between night's emptiness and day's chaos. Dominic Walker sat on his usual bench near the Amtrak gates, a blanket pulled around his shoulders, watching the world wake up around him. 4 years on the streets had taught him to become invisible. Don't make eye contact. Don't ask for money too aggressively. Don't smell too bad or look too threatening. Exist in the spaces between other people's awareness. He'd become an expert at it. Most days, hundreds of people passed within feet of him without ever registering his presence. This morning felt different, though he couldn't say why. Maybe it was the particular quality of light coming through the station's tall windows. Maybe it was the date, December 15th, exactly 4 years since the day that had destroyed his life. Or maybe it was simply that after 4 years of surviving, he was finally terribly tired. A young woman in a restaurant uniform hurried past coffee cups balanced on a tray. Jessica Martinez, though Dominic didn't know her name. She worked at the cafe on the station's north side, had worked there for 2 years. She'd seen Dominic before, countless times, always felt something when she looked at him. Not pity exactly. Something else. Something like recognition, though she could never place where she might have known him from. This morning she paused, just for a second, long enough to look at his face. Really look and feel that strange familiarity again. But her manager was calling, customers were waiting, and the moment passed. She hurried on, leaving Dominic alone with his thoughts. He didn't notice her attention. His gaze was fixed on something else entirely. 30 feet away, near the ticket counter, someone had left a Viola case on a bench. It sat there alone, abandoned, black and battered, and somehow heartbreaking in its solitude. Dominic stared at it for 10 minutes before he realized he was crying. He hadn't cried in 2 years. Hadn't let himself. Tears were dangerous when you lived on the street. They made you vulnerable. They made you human. And being human meant feeling things, and feeling things meant remembering, and remembering meant the Viola case sat there, waiting, calling, accusing. Dominic's hands started shaking. They did that sometimes, usually in the morning before he'd had anything to drink or any food to stabilize his blood sugar. But this was different. This was the tremor of recognition. His hands remembered something his mind had tried desperately to forget. 20 minutes passed. The Viola case remained abandoned. Station security would find it, eventually take it to Lost, and found maybe trace its owner through a name tag or a phone number inside. But right now, in this moment, it was just sitting there. And Dominic was just sitting here. And something was pulling him forward like gravity. He stood up. His legs protested. Sleeping on benches didn't do good things to a 42-year-old body, but he moved anyway. One step. Another. The distance between his bench and that Viola case felt infinite and impossible and necessary all at once. His hand touched the case. Leather worn soft by years of use. He felt the latch under his thumb. One click, another. The case opened. The instrument inside was beautiful. Not expensive, probably. Student grade, maybe intermediate. The varnish was scratched, the bridge slightly warped. But to Dominic, looking at it, it might as well have been a Stradivarius. It might as well have been the voice of God. He lifted it out. The weight in his hands felt like coming home and like drowning all at once. His fingers found the neck. His chin found the rest. 4 years fell away. 4 years of carefully constructed numbness. 4 years of forgetting. 4 years of telling himself that part of his life was over, that those skills were gone, that the man who'd once stood on the stage at Carnegie Hall was dead and buried alongside everyone he'd loved. His bow hand trembled as he picked up the bow. Rosin dust still clung to the horsehair. Someone had played this recently. Someone had made music with this instrument, had created beauty, had done the thing Dominic had sworn he'd never do again. Around him, the station continued its morning routine. People rushing announcements, echoing the smell of coffee and cleaning products and humanity all mixed together. Nobody was watching him. Nobody cared. He was invisible after all. Just another homeless man now holding an instrument he'd probably stolen. The thought almost made him laugh. Stolen. As if he could steal something that had already been stolen from him. As if music hadn't been ripped out of his hands 4 years ago in a grocery store in Manhattan, in a moment of random violence that had taken everything and left him alive to suffer through the aftermath. Dominic's fingers found the strings. Muscle memory, they called it. His body remembered what his mind had tried to forget. His left hand knew where to press, where to vibrate, where to create the notes that would become music. His right hand knew the weight of the bow, the pressure needed, the angle required. He didn't decide to play. The decision was made for him by something deeper than thought, deeper than reason. His hands moved. Sound emerged. Just one note at first. An open A string resonating through the instrument, through his body, through the space around him. That single note contained everything, every loss, every memory. Every morning he'd woken up on this bench, wanting to die. Every evening he'd fallen asleep, trying not to remember their faces. Every moment in between, when he'd convinced himself that survival was enough, that breathing was enough, that existence without purpose was somehow still life. The note faded. Silence returned. And Dominic Walker made a decision. Not consciously, not with any grand plan or hope for redemption, but a decision nonetheless. He would play, one last time, for Alicia, who'd never hear music again. For Caleb, who'd been silenced before he'd barely learned to speak. For himself, for the man he'd been before the world had ended. He didn't know this decision would change everything. He didn't know that among the thousands of people who would pass through this station today, several would recognize him. He didn't know that in exactly 6 hours, he'd be standing in front of 500 people playing the performance of his lifetime. He didn't know that the viral video about to be created would reach 20 million people in 48 hours. And he certainly didn't know that the boy he'd buried 4 years ago was alive, was here, was about to find him. All he knew was the weight of the viola in his hands and the desperate need to create something beautiful one last time before the darkness took him completely. He lifted the instrument to his shoulder. He closed his eyes. And he began to play. To understand who Dominic Walker was in this moment, you need to understand who he'd been. You need to see the height from which he fell. Because the distance between Carnegie Hall and a bench at Union Station isn't measured in miles. It's measured in shattered dreams and broken promises and the particular kind of death that leaves you still breathing. Dominic was born in 1981 on the south side of Chicago. Not the gentrified south side that exists in parts today. The real south side. The one where gunshots were as common as car horns, where poverty wasn't abstract, but immediate and crushing, where most kids didn't make it out, and the ones who did usually left everything behind to do it. His mother, Patricia Walker, cleaned houses for wealthy families on the north side. His father was gone, not dead, just gone the way fathers sometimes were in that neighborhood. Patricia worked 70 hours a week to keep their apartment and put food on the table. She shouldn't have had anything left for dreams, but she did. When Dominic was 7 years old, Patricia took him to a free concert at the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. Some community outreach program designed to expose inner-city kids to classical music. Most of the children were bored, fidgeting, waiting for it to be over. Dominic sat transfixed. He'd never heard anything like it. The sound filled something in him he hadn't known was empty. After the concert, Patricia noticed how her son couldn't stop talking about the viola. Not the violins, which most kids noticed, because they were more prominent. The viola, the middle voice, the instrument that filled the space between melody and bass, that made everything whole without demanding attention. Patricia worked an extra job for 6 months, saved every penny, and on Dominic's 8th birthday, she presented him with a rental viola from a music shop on the north side. It was the most expensive thing she'd ever bought that wasn't food or rent. It cost $150 for 3 months rental. She had no idea how she'd pay for the next 3 months, But she'd seen something in her son's eyes at that concert, something that looked like hope. Dominic taught himself for the first year using library books and free YouTube videos. He was terrible. The sounds he made could barely be called music. Their neighbors complained. But he practiced every single day for hours, with the kind of obsessive focus that separates people who want something from people who need it. When he was 9, a music teacher at his school heard him playing in an empty classroom. Her name was Mrs. Rodriguez, and she'd been teaching music in Chicago public schools for 30 years. She'd seen a lot of kids with talent. But Dominic was different. He didn't just have talent. He had hunger. He had the kind of desperate determination that comes from knowing music is the only ladder out of the hole you're born in. Mrs. Rodriguez started teaching him for free, after school during lunch, whenever she could spare the time. She taught him properly technique music theory, how to read complex scores. She entered him into youth competitions. He didn't win at first. He was too raw, too rough around the edges. But he got better. Rapidly, impossibly better. By the time Dominic was 14, he was principal violist in the Chicago Youth Symphony Orchestra. By 16, he was soloing with them. By 17, he'd won the National Young Artists Competition, beating out kids who'd had private lessons since they could walk kids whose parents spent thousands on instruments and training. The prize was a full scholarship to Curtis Institute of Music in Philadelphia. Curtis, one of the most prestigious music conservatories in the world. Acceptance rate lower than Harvard. Alumni who went on to principal chairs in major orchestras around the globe. Patricia cried when she got the news. Not sad tears, proud tears. Her son, her baby boy from the South Side, was going to study at Curtis, was going to have the life she'd never dared dream for herself. Dominic arrived at Curtis in 1998, 17 years old, and terrified. Everyone there seemed to come from a different world. Private school educations, summer music festivals in Europe, parents who were doctors and lawyers and sometimes musicians themselves. He was the only student in his class who'd learned his first notes from library books. He thought he'd fail. Thought he'd wash out in the first semester another cautionary tale about kids from the wrong side of the tracks who couldn't make it in the elite world. But he didn't fail. He thrived. Because while the other students had advantages, Dominic had something else. He had the knowledge that this was his only shot, that there was no safety net, no plan B, no wealthy parents to catch him if he fell. He practiced 8 hours a day, 10 on weekends. His roommate thought he was insane. His teachers thought he was brilliant. By his second year, he was getting solo opportunities. By his third year, orchestras were contacting him about auditions. And then in his fourth year, in the middle of rehearsing a Brahms symphony, he met Alicia Thompson. Alicia was a cellist, senior year preparing for her graduation recital. She was from Connecticut, old money, exactly the kind of person Dominic had assumed would never give him a second glance. But in the middle of that rehearsal, during a particularly difficult passage, their eyes met. Something passed between them. Recognition, maybe. Or fate, if you believed in that sort of thing. They started talking after rehearsals. Coffee became dinner, became long walks around Philadelphia, became something neither of them could quite name, but both of them felt. She was brilliant, not just as a musician, but as a person. Quick-witted, compassionate, unafraid to challenge him when he got too intense about music. She made him laugh. She made him believe that maybe possibly he could have more than just music. Maybe he could have a life. They graduated together in 2002. Both of them got immediate offers. Alicia joined the Philadelphia Orchestra. Dominic, after a grueling audition process, won the principal viola position with the New Jersey Symphony Orchestra. Not the biggest orchestra, not the most prestigious, but a paying position at 21 years old was nearly unheard of. They got married in 2003. Small ceremony, just family and close friends. Patricia flew out from Chicago crying through the whole thing. She got to see her son in a tuxedo, marrying a woman who loved him, both of them with careers in music. Everything she'd worked for, everything she'd dreamed had come true. The next 15 years were, by any measure, remarkable. Dominic moved from New Jersey to the Boston Symphony, then to the San Francisco Symphony. Each position was more prestigious, better paying, more secure. He was making a name for himself. Critics called him one of the finest violists of his generation. He recorded chamber music albums. He guest soloed with orchestras across the country. In 2015, Alicia got pregnant. They'd been trying for years, had almost given up hope. When the test came back positive, Dominic remembers standing in their San Francisco apartment bathroom, holding Alicia, while she cried happy tears, feeling like every good thing that had ever happened to him was suddenly multiplied by infinity. Caleb was born in September 2015. 7 pounds, 3 ounces. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. He had Alicia's eyes and Dominic's nose and lungs that could scream louder than any instrument Dominic had ever heard. Holding his son for the first time, Dominic understood something he'd never fully grasped before. This was what life was for. Not the music, not the success, not the applause. This tiny human who needed him, who trusted him completely, who represented every hope for the future. They were good parents, not perfect. No one is but good. Alicia took maternity leave, then went back to the orchestra part-time. Dominic structured his schedule around Caleb's needs. They played music for him constantly, not just classical everything, jazz, folk, rock, world music. They wanted him to love sound, to understand that music was bigger than any one genre or tradition. Caleb's first word wasn't mama or dada. It was more. More music, more sound, more everything. In 2017, Dominic achieved what he'd been working toward his entire career. The Metropolitan Opera in New York offered him principal viola. The Met. One of the great opera houses of the world. It was the kind of position musicians spent decades trying to reach. Dominic was 36. They moved to New York. Found an apartment in Queens that they could almost afford. Caleb was 2, starting to talk in full sentences, showing early signs of perfect pitch. When Dominic practiced at home, Caleb would sit nearby, swaying to the music, occasionally singing along in a pitch-perfect voice that made both parents stop and stare. Life was good. Life was so good that Dominic sometimes woke up at night, terrified, certain that something would go wrong, that this much happiness couldn't possibly last. Alicia would feel him tense beside her in bed, would pull him close, would whisper that everything was okay, that they were safe, that they'd earned this. She was wrong. In 2019, Dominic played at Carnegie Hall, not with the Met. This was a special chamber music concert, a benefit for music education programs. He played Brahms' Viola Sonata, number 1, the same piece he'd played for his Curtis audition 20 years earlier. Alicia was in the audience. Caleb sitting on her lap, amazingly quiet for a 4-year-old, listening to his father make beauty on stage. That performance was reviewed in the New York Times. The critic called it transcendent and one of the finest viola performances in recent memory. For a moment, a brief, shining moment, Dominic Walker stood at the absolute peak of his profession. Principal viola at the Met. Critical acclaim. A family he loved. A son who might someday be even better than he was. That performance was in November 2019. By Christmas, everything was gone. December 21st. 2019. 11 days before Dominic's 38th birthday. The temperature in Manhattan was hovering around freezing, that particular kind of cold that makes the city feel both beautiful and hostile at the same time. Light snow had fallen overnight, not enough to disrupt traffic, but enough to make everything look softer, gentler than it really was. The Met was dark that day, no performance, no rehearsal. Dominic had the whole day off, a rarity during the season. Alicia was also free. They'd planned it weeks in advance, a family day. Shopping for Christmas presents, lunch somewhere special, maybe ice skating in Central Park, if Caleb was up for it. Normal things. The kind of mundane, precious moments that make up a life. They took the subway into Manhattan, Caleb between them, holding both their hands, chattering about everything and nothing. He was in a phase where he asked constant questions. Why is the sky blue? How do trains work? Why do some people sleep on the sidewalk? That last question had been harder to answer. They'd passed a homeless man on their walk to the subway, and Caleb had stared with the unfiltered curiosity of a child who hasn't learned yet that you're supposed to look away. Dominic had knelt down, met his son's eyes. Sometimes people have hard times, he'd said. Sometimes life is difficult, and they need help. It seemed like enough of an answer for a 4-year-old. It seemed like everything important had been said. They went to a toy store first. Caleb was mesmerized by everything running from display to display, with that boundless energy that only young children possess. Dominic and Alicia trailed behind, holding hands, laughing at their son's enthusiasm. These were the moments they'd remember someday, Dominic thought. When Caleb was grown, when they were old, these perfect, ordinary moments would be what they talked about. After the toy store, they headed to a grocery store on the Upper West Side. Nothing fancy, just a regular store where they could pick up ingredients for Christmas dinner. Alicia wanted to cook something special. Dominic had volunteered to help, though his cooking skills were limited at best. Caleb pushed the cart, standing on the back, riding it like a scooter, while his parents pretended to disapprove and secretly found it adorable. The store was crowded. Saturday afternoon, 11 days before Christmas, everyone trying to get their shopping done before the holiday rush got worse. Dominic remembered thinking how alive the city felt, how full of energy and possibility. He remembered Caleb singing to himself some song he'd learned at preschool, off-key but enthusiastic. He remembered Alicia bumping his hip with hers, grinning happy. They were in the produce section when it started. Later, Dominic would try to remember the details. The police would ask, the therapists would ask, his own traumatized mind would ask. But it was all fragments, all pieces that didn't quite fit together into a coherent narrative. A man shouting, someone screaming, the sound of something falling, or was that the first gunshot? He could never be sure. Active shooter. That's what they called it later. An active shooter situation. A man with 2 handguns and some grievance no one could quite explain, walking through a grocery store on the Upper West Side of Manhattan, firing at random. 19 shots total, 7 people hit, 3 dead at the scene. Dominic's memory of the next 60 seconds existed in freeze frames, in moments of crystal clarity separated by absolute blackness. Alicia's face turning toward the sound, her eyes going wide, her mouth opening to say something, his name maybe, or Caleb's, or just a sound of shock and fear. Her body moving in front of their son, instinctive, immediate, a mother protecting her child without thought or hesitation. The sound of the gunshot. Louder than any sound Dominic had ever heard, louder than an orchestra at full volume, louder than anything that should exist in a grocery store on a Saturday afternoon. The sound of the bullet entering his wife's body. The wet, terrible sound of it exiting. The sound of her falling. Caleb screaming. Not crying, screaming. That high, piercing shriek of a child who doesn't understand what's happening but knows it's wrong, knows the world has just broken in some fundamental way. Dominic dropping to his knees beside Alicia. Her blood spreading across the white tile floor, impossibly red, impossibly much. Her hand finding his. Her lips moving but no sound coming out. Or maybe sound was coming out, but his ears were ringing too badly to hear it. Her eyes. God. Her eyes looking at him with something that might have been love, or might have been accusation, or might have been just the fading of light as her brain realized what her body already knew. Another shot. This one closer. Dominic felt something impact his left shoulder, felt the burn and tear of it, but distantly, like it was happening to someone else. He was still focused on Alicia, still trying to hold her, still trying to say something that would make this not be real. Caleb. Where was Caleb? Dominic turned the world moving in slow motion and too fast all at once. His son was on the ground 3 feet away, curled in a ball. Was he hit? Was he breathing? Dominic couldn't tell. There was blood, too much blood, but he couldn't tell whose it was. His wife's. His own. His son's. He crawled toward Caleb. Sirens in the distance, getting closer. People screaming. The shooter still moving through the store, still firing each shot, another universe ending for someone. Dominic reached. Caleb pulled him close. Felt the small body trembling, felt wetness that was tears or blood or both. It's okay, Dominic heard himself saying. Though nothing was okay, nothing would ever be okay again. It's okay, buddy. Daddy's here. Daddy's got you. Caleb wasn't responding, wasn't moving except for that trembling. Dominic looked down and saw the blood spreading across his son's chest. Not a lot, not like Alicia, but enough. More than enough. A wound just below the ribcage, small entry point, impossible to know what it had hit inside. Police arrived. SWAT team. Everything became chaos. Someone pulled Dominic away from Caleb. He fought them screaming, still trying to hold his son. Someone else was working on Alicia, but Dominic could see in their faces that it was already too late. There was a moment, one clear, terrible moment, when the EMT working on his wife looked up and caught Dominic's eyes and shook her head slightly. That tiny gesture contained everything. She's gone. I'm sorry. There's nothing we can do. Dominic and Caleb were loaded into the same ambulance. The boy was unconscious by then, his tiny body strapped to a gurney that made him look impossibly small. Dominic sat beside him, his own shoulder wound forgotten, holding his son's hand, begging God or the universe or anyone who would listen to please, please not take his boy too. At the hospital, they separated them. Dominic needed surgery on his shoulder. The bullet had shattered his collarbone, damaged muscle and nerve, but he didn't care about that. He only cared about Caleb, about getting information, about knowing if his son would survive. Hours passed. Surgery, recovery, pain medication that made everything fuzzy. The bullet in his shoulder turned out to be relatively minor, considering. Clean extraction, no permanent damage to his arm or hand. He'd be able to play again, the doctors assured him. As if that mattered. As if anything mattered. A doctor came to talk to him. Young woman, kind face, exhausted eyes. She sat down beside his bed and took his hand, and Dominic knew before she spoke. You can always tell. The way they sit, the way they breathe, the way they look anywhere but at your eyes. Mr. Walker, I'm so sorry. We did everything we could. Caleb had died in surgery. The bullet had nicked his liver, caused massive internal bleeding. They'd tried for 2 hours to save him. Transfusions, clamps, everything modern medicine could do. But he was so small, 4 years old. His body couldn't take the trauma. He didn't suffer, the doctor said. He was unconscious. He didn't feel any pain. Dominic didn't respond. Couldn't. There were no words in any language for what he felt in that moment. His wife was dead. His son was dead. He was alive. The wrongness of it was so profound, it went beyond grief, beyond despair. It was ontological. It was the fundamental structure of reality proving itself to be obscene and meaningless. They kept him in the hospital for 3 days. Physical recovery from the gunshot wound. Psychological evaluation because he wouldn't speak, wouldn't eat, wouldn't do anything but lie in bed staring at the ceiling. They talked about PTSD, about trauma, about grief counseling, and support groups, and medication that might help him cope. They used all these words like they meant something like anything could help. Like there was a process that could bring you back from watching your entire world end its 60 seconds in a grocery store. Patricia flew in from Chicago. His mother, who'd worked her whole life so he could have music, who'd sacrificed everything so he could escape the South Side and make something of himself. She sat beside his hospital bed and held his hand and cried. She'd lost her daughter-in-law and her grandson. She watched her son disappear into a grief so profound it looked like death wearing a living face. The funerals were a blur. Double funeral. Mother and child buried together. Dominic stood at the graveside in a borrowed black suit. His own clothes had been seized as evidence and watched them lower 2 caskets into the frozen ground. Alicia's parents were there destroyed, her sister sobbing, his mother stoic and shattered. Musicians from the Met, from the Philadelphia Orchestra, from everywhere Dominic and Alicia had worked. Hundreds of people, all of them trying to find something to say to a man who'd lost everything. But Dominic wasn't really there. Part of him had stayed in that grocery store. Part of him had died with his wife and son. What came back from the funeral, what went back to their Queens apartment, was something else. A shell. A ghost. A man going through the motions of living because stopping would require more effort than continuing. The Met gave him leave. Indefinite, compassionate leave. "Come back when you're ready," they said. "Take all the time you need." He didn't tell them he'd never be ready. He didn't tell them he couldn't imagine ever touching a viola again, couldn't imagine creating beauty when the only thing he could see was blood spreading across white tile. For 3 months, Dominic existed. He didn't live. Living implies some kind of purpose or direction. He existed. He sat in the apartment surrounded by his dead family's things. Caleb's toys in the corner. Alicia's cello in its case by the window. Photos on the walls showing a life that might as well have belonged to someone else. He ate when his mother called and reminded him. He slept when exhaustion overwhelmed his racing thoughts. He took the medications the psychiatrist prescribed, though they didn't help, though nothing helped. The insurance money came through. Life insurance on Alicia. She'd been worth more dead than alive, according to the actuaries. The thought made Dominic laugh, a sound so bitter and broken it scared his mother when she heard it over the phone. $600,000 blood money. The price of his wife's life, apparently. He should have done something practical with it. Saved it, invested it, used it to start over. But starting over implied he wanted a future. And Dominic didn't. All he wanted was to not feel. All he wanted was to make the screaming in his head stop. All he wanted was to not wake up every morning and remember all over again that they were gone. So he drank. At first just at night, to help him sleep. Then during the day, to dull the edges of consciousness. Then constantly, because being sober meant being aware, and being aware meant feeling, and feeling was unbearable. Vodka, mostly. Cheap, effective, easy to drink until you couldn't remember your own name. The alcohol wasn't enough. Someone he never remembered who gave him pills. Painkillers, probably opioids, though he didn't ask and didn't care. They made the world soft and distant and tolerable. He took them with the vodka, which he knew was dangerous, which was probably the point. If he died, fine. If he didn't, also fine. Nothing mattered except the blessed numbness. 4 months after the shooting, Patricia came to check on him, let herself in with her key, found her son passed out on the couch, empty bottles everywhere, the apartment filthy and dark. She called 911. They took him to the hospital, pumped his stomach, kept him for psychiatric observation. Possible suicide attempt, the paperwork said. Dominic didn't correct them. When he got out, he found an eviction notice on the apartment door. He'd stopped paying rent. Hadn't even noticed. The insurance money was gone, drunk away, drugged away, given away to dealers and bartenders and anyone else who could provide what he needed. $600,000 in 4 months. It should have been impossible. It wasn't. Patricia begged him to come back to Chicago, to live with her, to get help to try. But Dominic couldn't. Chicago meant music. Chicago meant memories of who he'd been before Curtis, before he'd dared to hope for something better. Going back would mean admitting defeat on every level. He couldn't do it. So he stayed in New York. Couch surfed for a while, staying with friends who didn't understand but tried to help. But addiction and grief are both isolating forces, and together, they're nearly insurmountable. One by one, his friends gave up. Can't help someone who won't help themselves, they said. He's got to want to get better. He's got to hit rock bottom first. Rock bottom. As if there were a bottom. As if after watching your 4-year-old son die in your arms, there could be anywhere lower to fall. By the end of 2020, Dominic was on the streets. Truly homeless, not just couch surfing or staying in shelters, living under overpasses in abandoned buildings anywhere he could find shelter and score enough drugs or alcohol to get through another day. New York's homeless services tried to help. Got him into shelters, got him into detox programs, but he always left, always went back to the streets. Because the streets didn't ask questions. The streets didn't expect him to heal or improve or become someone he'd never be again. He ended up in Chicago somehow. Didn't remember the journey, couldn't have said why that city instead of any other. Maybe some broken part of him was trying to go home. Maybe it was pure chance. Either way, by early 2021, Dominic Walker was living on the streets of the city where he'd been born, where his mother still lived, though he didn't contact her. What would he say? Look at what your sacrifice created, Mom. Look at what became of your investment. 4 years. 4 years of survival without living. 4 years of watching the world continue as if nothing had happened, as if his entire universe hadn't ended in 60 seconds of random violence. 4 years of being invisible, of being another face in the city's homeless population, of being exactly the kind of person he'd explained to his son on that last morning. Sometimes people have hard times. Sometimes life is difficult, and they need help. But here's what he hadn't told Caleb, what he hadn't known then. Sometimes people have hard times, and the world forgets them. Sometimes life is difficult, and there is no help, no rescue, no redemption. Sometimes you fall, and there's no one to catch you, and the falling just continues forever. For 4 years, Dominic didn't touch a musical instrument. Couldn't. Even seeing someone with a violin case on the subway made him shake. Music had been his way out of the South Side, his identity, his gift. And it had led him to the life where he met Alicia, where they had Caleb, where he was standing in that grocery store when the shooting started. Music had created everything beautiful in his life, and in some twisted logic his traumatized brain had constructed. Music was therefore responsible for everything he'd lost. So, he didn't play, didn't hum, didn't listen, if he could avoid it. For 4 years, the most gifted violist of his generation lived in absolute silence, both external and internal. The music that had once filled every moment of his existence was gone, replaced by the much louder silence of grief. Until December 15th, 2023. Until Union Station. Until a Viola case left abandoned on a bench. Until his hands remembered what his mind had tried so desperately to forget. Back in Union Station, in the present moment, Dominic stood with the viola in his hands. The weight of it felt like carrying the entire past 4 years, felt like every choice that had led him to this point. His fingers pressed against the strings, feeling the slight give of them, the way they wanted to vibrate, to create sound. Around him, the morning rush was building. More people, more noise, more of the world continuing in its relentless forward motion. A businessman hurrying past nearly bumped into him, then did a double take, seeing the homeless man with the instrument. The businessman's face went through several expressions in quick succession: surprise, disgust, curiosity, then that carefully neutral look people wear when they're pretending they haven't seen something uncomfortable. Dominic noticed, and didn't care. He'd seen that look 1,000 times. Had learned to see through it to understand that most people weren't cruel, just overwhelmed. Everyone had their own problems, their own weights to carry. They couldn't be expected to care about every homeless person they passed. But then someone laughed. A young man college age, seeing Dominic with the viola. "Yo, check it out," the kid said to his friend, voice loud enough to carry. "Homeless dude thinks he's in an orchestra." The friend laughed too. "Probably gonna play hot cross buns or something." More laughter. They weren't being malicious, not really. Just thoughtless, just kids making a joke without considering that the subject of their joke could hear them was human, had feelings, and a history they couldn't begin to guess at. Something shifted in Dominic. Not anger, exactly. He was too tired, for anger had used up that emotion years ago. But something. A spark of defiance, maybe. Or pride remembering who he'd been. Or simple exhaustion with being invisible, being dismissed, being assumed to be nothing. More people were noticing now. The businessman had stopped, was watching from a distance. A woman with a stroller had paused, one hand on the stroller's handle, curious despite herself. Security guards were drifting closer, probably about to tell him to move along, that he couldn't obstruct traffic, couldn't be here with a stolen instrument. Dominic's hands trembled. The viola felt impossibly heavy and impossibly light all at once. Every reason not to play ran through his mind. He'd forgotten how. It had been too long. His technique would be gone, his tone ugly, his intonation off. He'd embarrass himself, prove the kids right, confirm everyone's assumptions about homeless people and mental illness, and the unbridgeable gap between the world he'd once inhabited and the one he lived in now. But beneath all those reasons was something else. A memory so clear it hurt. Caleb, 2 years old, sitting on the floor of their San Francisco apartment while Dominic practiced. The way his son's face would light up when the music got particularly beautiful. The way he'd sway, tiny body moving to rhythms he couldn't yet name, but could feel. The way he'd clap when Dominic finished his small hands, making that distinctive, uncoordinated sound of toddler applause. For you, Dominic thought. This is for you. He lifted the viola to his shoulder. The familiar pressure of the chin, rest the weight distribution, the angle of his arm. All of it came back with shocking immediacy. Muscle memory was real. His body knew even if his mind had spent 4 years trying to forget. His bow touched the strings. Not playing yet, just contact, feeling the resistance, the potential. Around him, the station continued its morning chaos. Announcements echoed from speakers. Coffee machines hissed. A train's departure was called, passengers hustling toward gates. The world indifferent and ongoing. Dominic closed his eyes. He thought of Alicia, the way she'd looked at him after his Carnegie Hall performance, pride and love shining in her face. He thought of his mother working 3 jobs so he could have a rental viola, never complaining, never suggesting he should do something more practical. He thought of Mrs. Rodriguez at his elementary school, seeing something in a 9-year-old boy from the South Side and deciding he was worth the effort. He thought of Caleb. Always Caleb. The weight of his son's body in his arms. The sound of his voice asking endless questions. The way he'd hum along when music played perfect pitch, even as a toddler inheriting both parents' gifts. The future Dominic had imagined teaching his son, passing on everything he knew. Watching him become something even greater. All of it gone. All of it except this instrument, these hands, this moment. He couldn't bring them back. Couldn't undo the shooting or the years of grief and addiction that followed. Couldn't return to Carnegie Hall or the Met or any version of the life he'd lost. But he could do this. He could play. One last time. He could create something beautiful in a world that had shown him nothing but ugliness for so long. The bow moved. Sound emerged. A single note, an open C string resonating through the instrument and into the space around him. It wasn't perfect. His tone was rough, uncertain, the intonation slightly off. But it was sound. It was music. After 4 years of silence, it was everything. The noise of the station began to fade. Not physically, the announcements still echoed, the coffee machines still hissed. But in Dominic's awareness, they receded, became background, became less important than the sound he was creating. His bow moved again, finding the next note, then the next. His left hand remembered where to press which fingers for which notes. 4 years hadn't erased the 10,000 hours of practice, the decades of training, the fundamental neural pathways that made him one of the best violists of his generation. He began to play for real. Not scales, not exercises. Brahms. Viola Sonata, number 1. The piece he'd played at Curtis at Carnegie Hall at every significant moment of his musical life. The opening theme, melancholic and searching, looking for something that might not exist but has to be sought anyway. The technique came back. Vibrato, that slight oscillation of pitch that makes strings sing instead of simply sound. Bow pressure varying from light to heavy, creating dynamics that told a story. Intonation, finding the exact center of each note, the place where it rings true. All of it flooding back like a language he'd spoken fluently once and hadn't realized he still knew. Around him, something was changing. The businessman who'd stopped was now standing still, phone forgotten in his hand, watching. The woman with the stroller had paused completely, one hand covering her mouth. The college kids who'd laughed were silent now, looking at each other with expressions that said they were realizing their mistake. More people were stopping, drawn by the sound, by the impossibility of it. Because it was impossible. This shouldn't sound like this. A street performer, fine, they existed in every major city, often quite good. But this wasn't good. This was extraordinary. This was the kind of playing you heard in concert halls, on recordings at conservatories. This was professional-level artistry, emerging from a homeless man in a train station at 8 in the morning on a random Tuesday. Dominic played lost in the music, barely aware of the growing audience. The piece unfolded, each phrase building on the last, the Brahms creating its architecture of sound and emotion. He reached the first climax, the moment where the melody soars and the harmony underneath creates tension that demands resolution. His body swayed with the music, the way it always had, the way Alicia used to tease him about. "You're conducting yourself," she'd say. He'd never been able to stop, never wanted to. Tears ran down his face. He didn't notice. Or noticed, and didn't care. The music was saying everything he'd been unable to say for 4 years. Every moment of grief, every second of loss, every hour of despair, all of it channeled through the viola, through Brahms' genius, through his own hands and heart. This was what music was for, not entertainment, not even beauty for its own sake. This, communication of the incommunicable, expression of the inexpressible. The crowd was 50 people now, then 100. Phones were up, recording. People were texting others, calling friends. "You have to get down here. You're not going to believe this. I'm in Union Station, and there's this homeless guy, and he's playing like..." They couldn't finish the sentence. Like what? Like an angel, like someone who'd studied their entire life, like the concertmaster of a major orchestra, all true, all inadequate. Jessica Martinez, the waitress who'd felt that strange recognition earlier, pushed through the crowd. She had her phone out recording, but she wasn't thinking about social media or virality. She was thinking that she knew this music had heard it before somewhere. And there was something about the man playing something in his face, his posture even beneath the grime and the weathering of street life, that felt familiar. Where had she seen him before? Not on the street, not in the station. Somewhere else. Somewhere? She lowered her phone slightly, staring at his face instead of the screen. He had his eyes closed, completely absorbed in the music. But there was something in his features, something that reminded her of who the thought wouldn't come. But it nagged at her, insistent, important. Security guards approached, then stopped. They'd been moving to disperse the crowd, to tell this homeless man to move along. But the music stopped them. Even they, trained to see problems and address them efficiently, couldn't bring themselves to interrupt this. It would have been like stopping a sunset or silencing a bird in flight. Some things are beyond rules and regulations. Dominic moved into the second theme of the Brahms, the melody that's both melancholic and hopeful, that speaks of beauty remembered and beauty hoped for. His playing grew more intense, more personal. He wasn't performing anymore, if he ever had been. He was confessing. He was praying. He was saying goodbye to everyone he'd lost, and hello to the possibility that maybe somewhere beneath the grief and addiction and years of suffering he still existed. The morning light coming through the station's tall windows caught the dust in the air, made it glow, made the whole scene look like something out of a painting. A homeless man playing impossibly beautiful music, a crowd of strangers transfixed, a moment of unexpected grace in a place built for transit, for passing through, for going elsewhere. Dominic played on, unaware that his life was about to change. Unaware that among the hundreds of people now filling this corner of Union Station, several would recognize him once the videos went viral. Unaware that one person in particular, a social worker named Rebecca Foster, was even now pushing through the crowd, her phone to her ear, calling the office with barely controlled excitement. Most of all, Dominic was unaware that the boy he'd watched die 4 years ago was alive, was here in Chicago, was about to find his father through the one thing that had always connected them: music. But that revelation was still hours away. Right now, there was only this: the viola, the music, the unexpected possibility that even after losing everything, even after 4 years of wanting to die, even after becoming exactly the kind of invisible person he'd once pitied, even after all, that there might still be something left worth living for. The bow moved across the strings. Sound filled the station. And Dominic Walker, for the first time in 4 years, felt something other than grief. He felt alive. The transformation of Union Station happened gradually, and then all at once. One moment it was a normal Tuesday morning commuters hurrying to trains, the usual cacophony of modern life. The next, hundreds of people stood in absolute silence. Phones raised witnesses to something they'd spend years trying to describe. Dominic was deep into the Brahms, now approaching the development section where the themes he'd introduced earlier would be broken apart and reconstructed, tested, and transformed. His fingers moved with increasing confidence, the muscle memory fully awakened. 4 years meant nothing to muscles that had spent 35 years training. The pathways were still there, dormant, but intact, waiting. A teenager near the front of the crowd whispered to her friend, "Is this real?" The friend didn't answer, couldn't too transfixed by what they were hearing. The question was valid, though. It didn't feel real. Moments like this, beauty emerging from unexpected places, grace finding you, when you've stopped looking for it, always feel more like dreams than waking life. The businessman who'd been one of the first to stop had tears streaming down his face. He didn't know why, didn't know this homeless man didn't even particularly like classical music. But something in the playing reached him, touched a place he'd forgotten existed beneath the layers of meetings and deadlines and the 1,000 tiny compromises that made up his adult life. The music reminded him that beauty was real, that meaning existed, that the world was bigger and stranger and more profound than his daily routine suggested. Jessica Martinez was still trying to place where she knew Dominic from. She'd pulled up Google on her phone, was searching Viola player Chicago, and getting nothing useful. Too generic. But she knew she'd seen him somewhere. His face, even haggard and weathered, triggered something in her memory. She tried different searches. Viola soloist, Chicago Symphony, Metropolitan Opera, Viola. That last search pulled up some results, but the images were of orchestra sections, not individual players. She scrolled, frustrated, feeling like the answer was right there, if she could just wait. She clicked on an article from 5 years ago. Principal Viola Dominic Walker joins Metropolitan Opera. There was a photo. A man in his mid-30s, clean-cut, wearing an expensive suit, holding a viola, smiling for the camera. Confident, professional, successful. Jessica looked at the photo, looked at the homeless man playing 30 feet from her, back at the photo. It couldn't be. Could it? The basic bone structure was the same. The shape of his jaw, the set of his eyes. But everything else was different. The man in the photo looked like he'd never missed a meal, never slept rough, never had his soul systematically destroyed by grief and addiction. The man playing looked like he'd been hollowed out and filled with shadows. But it was him. It had to be. Jessica's hands shook as she kept reading. Walker, 36, previously principal. Viola with San Francisco Symphony. She scrolled faster. Another article, this one from 4 years ago. Musicians among victims in Manhattan grocery store shooting. Her breath caught. Alicia Walker, 38. Cellist with Philadelphia Orchestra died at the scene. Her son Caleb Walker, 4, died of injuries sustained. Oh God. Oh God. Jessica looked up at Dominic, seeing him completely differently now. Not just a homeless man with unexpected talent. A man who'd lost everything. A man who'd had a life, a career, a family, and watched it all end in the worst way imaginable. The article mentioned Dominic had been injured but survived. What it didn't mention, what she was seeing now, was how surviving can be its own kind of death. How you can breathe and eat and exist and still be gone in every way that matters. Around Dominic, the crowd had swelled to over 200 people. Station security had given up trying to manage it, had called for additional officers just to make sure the crowd stayed safe, that no one got trampled. This was unprecedented. Flash mobs happened, sure. Street performers drew crowds. But this was different. This had the feeling of witnessing something historic, something people would talk about for years. A news crew arrived. Channel 7. Their van double-parked outside the reporter and cameraman pushing through the crowd. The reporter was young, probably early in her career, drawn by the tips flooding her station's news desk. Homeless man playing classical music at Union Station. It sounded like a feel-good story, a quick human interest piece for the noon broadcast. She got her cameraman set up, started recording, prepared to do her stand-up intro. But then she really listened to the music, really watched the man playing, and realized this was bigger than she'd thought. This wasn't some street performer with a little talent. This was world-class artistry. This was someone who'd trained for decades, who'd devoted their life to music, who was creating something so beautiful, it made strangers cry. The reporter lowered her microphone, forgot about her stand-up. Just let the camera record. Sometimes the best journalism is knowing when to shut up and let the moment speak for itself. Dominic reached the climax of the first movement, the point where Brahms takes all the tension he's built and releases it in a cascade of notes that feel like catharsis, like everything you've been holding inside finally allowed to escape. Dominic's bow moved faster. His fingers flying across the fingerboard, the viola singing in a way that violas shouldn't be able to sing, the instrument's typically mellow voice somehow cutting through with the brightness and urgency of a violin. His body moved with the music swaying, the old dance of performance he'd done 1,000 times on 1,000 stages. But those stages had been planned, controlled, expected. This was raw, spontaneous, real, in a way those performances had never been. There was no pretense here, no performance anxiety, no awareness of critics or colleagues or anyone's expectations. Just him and the instrument, and the music, and the desperate need to say something he had no other words for. The moment peaked. Hold. Release. The final notes of the first movement rang out, sustained, fading into silence. Perfect silence. 200 people holding their breath. Dominic's bow left the strings. His eyes remained closed. Sweat ran down his face, despite the December cold. His shoulders heaved as he breathed, the physical exertion of playing at that level suddenly apparent. Someone started to applaud. Others joined. Within seconds, the applause was thunderous, echoing off the station's high ceilings, mixing with the ambient noise of trains and announcements to create a sound that was chaotic and beautiful, and perfectly appropriate for what had just happened. Dominic opened his eyes, blinked, seemed to see the crowd for the first time. His expression went from concentration to confusion to something like terror. This many people, all watching him, all having heard him. The vulnerability of it hit him like a physical blow. He lowered the viola, took a step back. His old instinct, the one honed by 4 years on the streets, was screaming at him to run, to disappear, to get away before something bad happened. Crowds were dangerous. Attention was dangerous. Being seen was dangerous. But before he could move, before he could vanish back into the anonymous masses of the homeless and the forgotten, someone in the crowd shouted, "More, please!" Others joined in. "Don't stop, keep playing." That was incredible. Dominic stood frozen, caught between the impulse to flee and something else. Something he'd thought was dead, pride maybe, or purpose. The feeling of being good at something, of having a gift that mattered, of creating beauty that touched people. His hands tightened on the viola. The instrument felt more familiar now, less like a stranger, and more like an old friend he'd abandoned. He thought of the second movement of the Brahms. Slower, more introspective, the melody that always reminded him of a lullaby, though Brahms probably hadn't intended it that way. He thought of singing that melody to Caleb when his son was a baby. Couldn't sleep, would only settle when music was playing. Caleb in his crib, tiny fists, waving dark eyes, Alicia's eyes watching his father with that intense baby focus. Dominic would sing the Brahms melody simplified, softened, and watch as Caleb's eyes gradually drooped as sleep finally claimed him. The memory should have broken him, should have been too painful to bear. But somehow in this moment, with 200 strangers waiting, it didn't break him. It transformed, became not just pain, but also love. Not just loss, but also gratitude for what he'd had, even briefly. Dominic lifted the viola again. The crowd immediately quieted, that instant silence that comes when people recognize they're about to witness something special. He placed the bow on the strings, took a breath, and began the second movement. The lullaby. The melody that spoke of tenderness and care, of protection and love. The music that had once soothed his son to sleep and now existed as a bridge between who Dominic had been and who he might become. The sweetness of it broke several people in the crowd. The businessman was openly sobbing now, though he couldn't have explained why if asked. The teenager who'd questioned if this was real had her hand over her heart, feeling it beat in time with the music. Jessica Martinez was crying too, still holding her phone, still recording, thinking about her adopted brother, about all the ways life breaks people and occasionally puts them back together in unexpected configurations. The news reporter's camera kept rolling. This was no longer a quick human interest story. This was something she'd build a career highlight reel around. This was the kind of moment that reminded you why you went into journalism in the first place, to bear witness to record, to say this happened, and it mattered. Online, the videos were starting to spread. People in the crowd had been live streaming, uploading to TikTok and Instagram and Twitter. Hashtags emerged organically: Union Station, Miracle Homeless, Virtuoso Chicago music. Within 20 minutes of Dominic starting to play, his performance was being watched by thousands. Within an hour, millions. But Dominic knew none of this. He was deep in the music, in the lullaby, in the memory of his son's face as sleep took him. The melody repeated, developed, transformed. Brahms, at his most intimate, his most personal. The kind of music that feels like eavesdropping on someone's private prayers. The second movement ended. Silence again. But this time, no applause. The music had been too tender, too personal. Applause would have felt like an intrusion. Instead, people just stood there, holding the moment, letting it settle into them before it passed. Dominic lowered the viola again. His arms ached out of shape after 4 years. His shoulder, where the bullet had torn through, throbbed with old pain. His fingers were stiff, the cold, and the playing both taking their toll. But beneath the physical discomfort was something else. Something he barely recognized because he hadn't felt it in so long. Peace. Not happiness. He was too shattered for anything as simple as happiness. But peace. The sense that for these few minutes, he'd been exactly where he was supposed to be, doing exactly what he was meant to do. The sense that maybe possibly there was still a reason to keep breathing. He looked at the crowd, really saw them for the first time. Hundreds of faces, all different, all looking at him with expressions he couldn't quite parse. Not pity, or not just pity. Something else. Respect, maybe. Recognition. The acknowledgement of shared humanity, of the fact that every person contains multitudes, that you can never know someone's story just by looking at them. A little girl near the front, maybe 6 years old, holding her mother's hand, spoke into the silence. Her voice was clear, childlike, cutting through the moment with innocent directness. "Mommy, why is he crying?" The mother shushed her, gently embarrassed. But the little girl's words made several people notice what had been obvious but unacknowledged. Dominic was crying, had been crying through both movements, tears running unchecked down his face, mixing with the grime and sweat, leaving clean tracks on his weathered skin. Dominic heard the girl's question, looked at her curious face, at her mother trying to quiet her. And for the first time in 4 years, he smiled. It was a broken smile, twisted by grief and exhaustion. But it was real. "Because it's beautiful," he said, his voice rough from disuse and emotion. "That's why people cry sometimes, sweetheart. Because something is so beautiful they can't hold it inside." The little girl seemed satisfied with this answer, nodded seriously. Her mother looked at Dominic with sudden compassion, seeing not just a homeless man, but a person, someone with thoughts and feelings and the ability to explain complex emotions to a child. The moment hung there, crystalline and perfect and temporary. And then someone in the crowd spoke a woman's voice, authoritative and urgent. "That's Dominic Walker." Heads turned. People looked at each other confused. The name meant nothing to most of them, but a few musicians, classical music fans, people who'd read about the Manhattan grocery store shooting, stiffened, stared, started pulling out their phones to search. Jessica stepped forward, phone still in hand. "You're Dominic Walker," she said, not a question. "You played with the Met. You were..." She trailed off, unable to finish. "How do you say it?" "You were the one whose family died. You were the one who disappeared. You were presumed dead yourself by some." Dominic's face went blank. The smile vanished. The brief moment of peace shattered. He took a step back, then another. The viola hung loose in his hand, fight or flight response kicking in, and flight was winning. "I'm nobody," he said, and his voice was breaking. "I'm nobody. I'm Mr. Walker." Another woman's voice, this one coming from the back of the crowd. People parted as she pushed through. Mid-40s professional clothing ID badge hanging from her neck. Rebecca Foster. Though Dominic didn't know her name yet, didn't know she'd been searching for him for over a year. Rebecca reached the front of the crowd, breathing hard from the effort of pushing through so many people. She looked at Dominic, and her eyes were bright with emotion, with urgency, with knowledge of something he didn't yet understand. "Mr. Walker," she said again. "My name is Rebecca Foster. I'm a social worker with Chicago Children and Family Services. I need to talk to you. It's about your son." The station seemed to tilt. Dominic's grip on the viola tightened, the only thing keeping him upright. "My son is dead," he said, and his voice was flat, drained of everything. "You have me confused with someone else?" "No," Rebecca said, And she was crying now too. Everyone was crying the whole moment, drenched in emotion that no one fully understood. "No, Mr. Walker. That's what I need to tell you. That's what I've been trying to find you to say. Caleb didn't die. Your son is alive." The viola fell from Dominic's hands. The crash of it hitting the floor echoed through the station, a discordant punctuation to Rebecca's impossible words. Somewhere someone screamed. People surged forward trying to help, trying to understand what was happening. But Dominic didn't hear any of it, didn't see the crowd or the cameras or anything else. All he heard was those 4 words repeating in his mind like a mantra, like a prayer, like something that couldn't possibly be true but had to be, because the alternative was too cruel. "Your son is alive. Your son is alive. Your son is alive." And then Dominic Walker, former principal Viola of the Metropolitan Opera, homeless man survivor father, collapsed to his knees on the floor of Union Station and wept like the world was ending and beginning all at once. The collapse happened fast. One moment, Dominic was standing, the next, he was on his knees, hands pressed to his face, whole body shaking with sobs so violent they looked like convulsions. Rebecca dropped beside him, one hand on his shoulder, speaking urgently into his ear, words no one else could hear over the sudden chaos. The crowd didn't know how to react. This had been a feel-good moment, an unexpected performance by a talented homeless man. Beautiful and touching, but ultimately safe, the kind of thing you'd share on social media with a caption about kindness and never judging books by covers. But now, it had become something else. Raw, painful. Private grief made public. Some people turned away uncomfortable with witnessing such a breakdown. Others pushed closer phones, still recording, unable to look away from the drama. The news crew kept their camera rolling. They'd been taught in journalism school about the ethics of filming trauma, but they'd also been taught that sometimes the most important moments are the most uncomfortable ones. Jessica pushed through to where Rebecca was crouching beside Dominic. "Is it true?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "His son, he's really alive." Rebecca looked up and Jessica saw something in her face. Confirmation, yes, but also pain, guilt, the weight of knowing something devastating that someone else doesn't know yet. "You're Jessica Martinez?" Rebecca asked. Jessica nodded, confused. "We need to talk," Rebecca said. "But not here, not now. Mr. Walker, can you hear me? Can you stand? We need to get you somewhere private." Dominic wasn't responding. He'd gone somewhere inside himself to a place beyond words or conscious thought. The news had short-circuited something fundamental in his brain. For 4 years, he'd built his entire existence on a single fact: his son was dead. That was the foundation. Everything else, the grief, the addiction, the homelessness, the 4 years of wanting to die, all of it rested on that one terrible truth. Except it wasn't true, had never been true, which meant everything else was wrong too, which meant 4 years of grief had been, what, unnecessary wasted, based on a misunderstanding so profound it had cost him everything. Station security arrived, finally pushing through the crowd with more authority now. But they weren't there to disperse everyone or move Dominic along. They were there to help. The lead security guard, a man in his 50s named Thomas Chen, who'd worked at Union Station for 20 years, had been watching the performance, had been moved by it, and now was seeing this man in crisis and recognizing that sometimes regulations matter less than humanity. "Let's get him to the office," Thomas said to Rebecca. "Medical's on the way, but we can give him some privacy until they get here." Rebecca nodded. She and Thomas each took one of Dominic's arms, gently helped him to his feet. He moved like a puppet with loose strings, body present, but mind elsewhere. They guided him through the crowd, which parted silently, respectfully. Jessica followed, though no one had invited her. Some instinct told her this was important, that she needed to be there for whatever was about to happen. The security office was small, cramped, filled with monitors showing different angles of the station. Thomas cleared off a chair, helped Dominic sit. Another security guard, handed Rebecca a bottle of water. She opened it, pressed it into Dominic's hands, but he just held it, staring at nothing. "Mr. Walker," Rebecca said gently. "Dominic, can you hear me?" A slight nod. Maybe. Or maybe just the tremor that seemed to be running through his whole body. "I need you to focus," Rebecca said. "I know this is overwhelming. I know this doesn't make sense. But your son is alive. He survived the shooting. The doctors saved him. And he's been living in Chicago for the past 3 years." Dominic's hands tightened on the water bottle. "They told me he died," he said. And his voice was barely human, ground glass and broken things. "In the hospital. They said. The doctor said, cardiac arrest, massive blood loss, they couldn't save him." There was confusion, Rebecca said, and even to her own ears it sounded inadequate, absurd. Confusion. As if confusion was sufficient to explain how a father could spend 4 years believing his son was dead when he wasn't. The hospital was overwhelmed that day. Multiple victims from the shooting. There was another child, similar age, similar injuries. In the chaos, there was a mistake. The wrong information was given to you. A mistake. Dominic repeated the word like it was in a foreign language. "By the time the hospital realized the error, you'd already left. They tried to find you, but you'd moved. Your phone was disconnected. They contacted the police, missing persons, social services. But you'd disappeared." Dominic laughed, and the sound was terrible. "I disappeared. Yeah, I disappeared into a bottle, then onto the street. I was right here. I was in this fucking city for 3 years and nobody found me because nobody looks at homeless people. We're invisible." "I know," Rebecca said. "You're right. It's a failure of the system of society of—" "Where is he?" Dominic interrupted. His eyes focused, suddenly fixed on Rebecca with an intensity that was almost frightening. "Where is my son? Take me to him. Right now. I need to see him. I need Mr. Walker. There's more you need to know first. I don't care. Whatever it is, I don't care. Just take me to him." Rebecca glanced at Jessica, who was standing in the doorway, silent, trying to make herself small. "Actually," Rebecca said slowly, "Caleb is probably closer than you think. Jessica, your brother, Caleb Martinez. He is Caleb Walker. You've been raising Dominic's son for the past 3 years." The silence in the small security office was total. Even the ambient noise from the monitors seemed to fade away. Jessica stared at Rebecca, then at Dominic, then back at Rebecca. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. "That's impossible," she finally said. "Caleb's parents died. The social worker told us. Both parents, they said. That's why he was put up for adoption. The father was presumed dead," Rebecca said. "No one could find him. After 2 years of searching, the legal system declared him deceased, so Caleb could be formally adopted. Your family took him in 3 years ago when he was 6. You've been wonderful to him, but his biological father has been alive this whole time." Dominic made a sound. Not words, just sound animal and broken. He stood up abruptly, the chair falling backward behind him. "I need to see him. Now. Right now. You can't tell me this and then make me wait. I can't." His breathing was coming too fast. Hyperventilating, panic attack building. Thomas moved closer, ready to catch him if he fell. But Dominic stayed upright through sheer force of will, hands balled into fists, every muscle tense. "He's at school," Jessica said quietly. "Lincoln Elementary. He'll be there until 3. Dominic looked at his wrist, bare. No watch. "What time is it now?" 9:45, Thomas said. 5 hours. Dominic's laugh was breaking again. 5 hours. After 4 years of thinking he was dead, 5 more hours is nothing, right? Nothing at all. We can bring you to the school, Rebecca said. But Dominic, Mr. Walker, you need to understand. Caleb doesn't know you're alive either. He was told the same thing. Both his parents died in the shooting. That's been his reality for 4 years. He's 9 years old now. The Martinez family is the only family he's known since he was 6. He has a new life, new name, new. He's my son. Dominic's voice was steel wrapped in broken glass. I don't care what name he's using or who's been taking care of him. He's my son, and I'm his father, and we're supposed to be together. That's how this works. That's how this is supposed to fucking work. No one argued. What could they say? Legally, Jessica's family had adopted Caleb. They'd followed all the proper procedures, had been given guardianship by the state when no family could be found. But morally, when a father who'd been presumed dead turns out to be alive, there was no precedent, no clear answer, no way to resolve this that wouldn't leave someone destroyed. Jessica was crying now, quiet tears streaming down her face. He's my brother, she said. We love him. Our whole family loves him. He calls my mother Mom. He calls my father Dad. He's happy. He's been healing. And now, she couldn't finish, but they all understood. Now what? Now this broken man, this homeless stranger, who turned out to be Caleb's biological father, was back. And everything was about to change again, for everyone. Outside the security office, the crowd was still there, still recording, still posting. The videos of Dominic's performance had already gone viral, truly viral, spreading across every platform, being shared by celebrities and musicians and random people who were moved by the beauty of it. But now the videos of his collapse, of Rebecca's revelation of the security guards helping him away, those were spreading too. The hashtags evolved. Union Station Miracle was joined by Find Caleb Walker. Homeless Virtuoso. Reunion Chicago Miracle. People were piecing together the story from fragments Google searches for Dominic Walker, old articles about the Manhattan shooting speculation, and sympathy, and the inevitable trolls who said it was all staged, all fake. But it wasn't fake. It was the most real thing that had happened in Union Station in decades, maybe ever. A paramedic arrived, called by station security, when Dominic had collapsed. She checked his vitals, found him dehydrated, malnourished, in mild shock, but not in immediate medical danger. She offered to take him to the hospital. He refused. I'm fine, he said, though he clearly wasn't. I just need to see my son. The paramedic looked at Rebecca, who nodded. We'll make sure he's okay, Rebecca said. Thank you for coming. When the paramedic left, Rebecca sat down across from Dominic. We need to talk about logistics, she said, about how this is going to work. You can't just show up at the school. It would be traumatic for Caleb. We need to prepare him. Need to. How do you prepare a 9-year-old for his dead father coming back to life? Dominic asked. What words exist for that conversation? I don't know, Rebecca admitted. But we have to try. We have to make this as gentle as possible, for his sake. Dominic's shoulders sagged. All the fight went out of him. Tell me about him, he said quietly. Please, tell me who he is now, what he's like. Is he okay? Jessica stepped forward. She sat down on the floor back against the wall, and for the next hour, she talked. She told Dominic about the scared 6-year-old who'd come to live with her family, the boy who'd had nightmares every night for the first year, who'd flinch at loud noises, who'd been so damaged by what he'd witnessed that no one was sure he'd ever fully recover. She told him how they'd loved him anyway, how her parents had been patient, gentle, consistent, how they'd gotten him therapy, had worked with his teachers, had slowly, carefully helped him rebuild a sense of safety in the world. She told him about Caleb now, about the boy who loved science and hated math homework, who played violin, yes, violin, drawn to music just like his biological parents had been, who had his father's gift for music and his mother's quick mind, who smiled more, now laughed sometimes, who was starting to trust that maybe the world wasn't entirely terrible. He talks about his first parents, sometimes, Jessica said. He has some memories, not many, he was so young. But he remembers music. He remembers someone playing for him, singing to him. He remembers feeling safe. And he remembers the grocery store. He remembers his mom falling. He remembers blood. He remembers thinking his dad was dead too. Dominic was crying again, silent tears. "What does he look like?" he asked. Jessica pulled out her phone, scrolled through photos, found one from Caleb's 9th birthday party 3 months ago. Caleb surrounded by friends, cake in front of him, candles lit face split in a huge smile. He'd grown, of course. Wasn't a 4-year-old anymore, but the eyes, Alicia's eyes, were the same. And something in his smile and the set of his jaw was pure Dominic. Dominic took the phone with shaking hands, stared at the photo. "That's my son," he whispered. "That's my Caleb." He looked up at Jessica. "He's beautiful. You've taken good care of him." "Thank you. Thank you for keeping him alive and safe and happy when I couldn't." Jessica had to look away, too emotional to respond. The plan came together slowly. Rebecca would go to the school, would pull Caleb out of class, would explain as gently as possible that his father was alive. Jessica would be there too for support, to help Caleb process the impossible news. And then if Caleb wanted, only if he wanted, they would bring him to meet Dominic. "What if he doesn't want to?" Dominic asked. "What if he's angry that I didn't find him sooner? What if he's happy with his new family and doesn't want his old father back?" "Then we respect that," Rebecca said gently. "We go slow. We let him set the pace. He's been through enough trauma. We don't add to it by forcing anything." Dominic nodded, understanding, but hating it. 4 years of grief, 4 years of wanting to die, and now 5 more hours of waiting. And even after those 5 hours, no guarantee of reunion. No guarantee that his son would want him, would forgive him, would understand why Dominic hadn't been there. Outside, the videos continued to spread. 20 million views became 50 million. National news picked it up, CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, all of them running segments on the Union Station miracle. Musicians from around the country were commenting, posting, expressing amazement and sympathy. A GoFundMe appeared, created by someone in the crowd, aiming to raise money to help Dominic. It hit its initial goal of $10,000 in 3 hours, then $50,000, then kept climbing. The world was watching, waiting, hoping for a happy ending. But happy endings aren't guaranteed. And the people actually living through this moment, Dominic, Jessica, Caleb, the Martinez family, knew that whatever happened next would be complicated and messy and painful, even if it was also joyful. Because that's how life works. That's how loss and love and unexpected grace work. They don't resolve neatly. They don't fit into Instagram captions or news segments. They're contradictory and confusing, and they require more courage than any viral video can capture. Dominic sat in the security office surrounded by strangers who were trying to help, waiting for 3 o'clock, waiting to see if his son, alive, impossibly alive, would want to see him. And he prayed to a God he'd stopped believing in 4 years ago, that the answer would be yes. The hours between 9:45 and 3 o'clock were the longest of Dominic's life. Longer than the 4 years on the street. Longer than the night in the hospital when they'd told him Caleb was dead. Because those times had been about enduring, about surviving. This was about hoping. And hope, after so long without it, was excruciating. Rebecca made phone calls. So many phone calls. To her supervisor, to the Martinez family, to the school principal, to lawyers who specialized in family reunification cases. Each conversation was careful, measured, focused on one question: what's best for Caleb? Not what's legally required. Not what makes the best news story, but what will cause the least additional trauma to a 9-year-old boy who'd already been through more than most people experience in a lifetime. Thomas, the security guard, brought Dominic coffee and a sandwich from the station cafe. Dominic tried to eat, managed a few bites before his stomach rebelled. The coffee he could handle hot and bitter and grounding. He wrapped his hands around the cup, needing something to hold something real and solid in a world that had suddenly become unmoored from everything he thought he knew. Jessica made her own calls. To her mother first, who screamed, literally screamed, when Jessica explained what was happening. Then crying. Then silence as Maria Martinez tried to process the impossible information. Her youngest son, the boy she'd been raising for 3 years, the child she'd come to love as fiercely as her biological children, had a father. A living father who wanted him back. Bring Caleb home. Maria finally said, her voice thick with emotion. Don't go to any meeting place. Bring him home. If his father wants to meet him, it should be here. In Caleb's home, where he feels safe. Jessica relayed this to Rebecca, who agreed immediately. Of course. The Martinez house, Caleb's territory, where he could retreat to his room if it became too much, where his family would be nearby if he needed them. Not some neutral location like a social services office or Rebecca's suggestion of a park. Home. By noon, the plan was set. Rebecca and Jessica would go to Lincoln Elementary at 2:30. They'd pull Caleb from class, take him to a private room, tell him as gently as humanly possible that his father was alive. Then they'd gauge his reaction, answer his questions, and if he was willing, bring him home to meet Dominic. Dominic would wait at the Martinez house. He'd go there now, actually, with Thomas, who'd volunteered to drive him. He'd shower, put on clean clothes borrowed from Jessica's father, who was roughly the same size, make himself look less like a homeless stranger and more like the father Caleb might remember from 5 years ago. Are you sure? Dominic asked Thomas. You don't have to do this. You don't know me. I know enough, Thomas said. I know you're a father who thought his son was dead and just found out he's alive. That's enough. The Martinez house was in Pilsen, a neighborhood on Chicago's Lower West Side. Working class, largely Hispanic, the kind of place where people knew their neighbors and looked out for each other's kids. The house itself was small, 2 stories, vinyl siding, a tiny front yard with a chain-link fence. Maria Martinez met them at the door. She was in her late 50s, short and round, with kind eyes that were currently red from crying. She looked at Dominic, really looked at him, taking in the weathered face, the homeless man's clothes, the way he held himself like he might break apart at any moment. And something in her face softened. You're Caleb's father, she said. Not a question. I'm Dominic, he said. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry I wasn't there. I'm sorry you had to. His voice broke. Thank you for taking care of him, for loving him. Thank you. Maria's eyes filled with fresh tears. She stepped forward and, without warning, pulled Dominic into a hug. He stiffened, hadn't been touched with kindness in so long, then collapsed into it, this stranger's embrace. This woman who'd done what he couldn't, who'd been a parent to his son when he'd been too broken to function. "Come inside," Maria said, when she finally released him. "Let's get you cleaned up." And then we wait. The shower was the first hot shower Dominic had taken in months. The shelters had showers, but they were cold and quick and shared with too many people. This was private, unlimited hot water, the kind of basic luxury he'd forgotten existed. He stood under the spray for 20 minutes, watching 4 years of street dirt wash away, wishing it was as easy to wash away the grief and guilt and self-hatred that had accumulated just as thick. Maria had left clothes on the bathroom counter. Jeans that were slightly too big in the waist, a button-down shirt, clean socks, even underwear still in the package. Dominic dressed slowly, hands shaking. He looked at himself in the mirror, first time in years he'd seen his full reflection in good light. The face looking back was his, but also wasn't. Older, harder, marked by suffering in ways that would never fully fade. But cleaner now. More human. He found Maria in the kitchen. She'd made coffee, had set out a proper lunch, rice, beans, chicken tortillas. Comfort food, the kind of meal that spoke of home and family and care. Dominic sat at the table, this stranger's table, in this house where his son lived, and tried to eat. This time he managed more the food, settling his stomach, giving him something to do with his hands, besides shake. "Tell me about him," Dominic said. "Please, I need to know everything." So Maria talked. She told him about the day Caleb had come to them, so small and scared and silent. How he hadn't spoken for the first week, had just sat in the corner of the living room, clutching a stuffed elephant that had somehow survived the shooting with him. How they'd worried he might never speak again, might be too traumatized to recover. She told him about the first time Caleb had laughed 3 months in watching Jessica's father do a silly dance with their dog. How the sound had startled all of them, this burst of joy from a child who'd shown nothing but sadness for so long. How they'd all cried, even the dog had seemed to understand something important had just happened. She told him about therapy, twice a week for the first year, then once a week, then monthly, as Caleb slowly healed. About night terrors that still happened sometimes, about his fear of loud noises, about how he couldn't go into grocery stores without panicking. About all the ways trauma marks a child, reshapes their nervous system, changes who they might have been. But she also told him about resilience, about how children can heal if they're given safety and love and time. About how Caleb had started smiling more, playing with other kids, doing normal 9-year-old things like complaining about homework and begging for a dog and learning to ride a bike. "He's a good kid," Maria said, and her voice was thick with love and pride. "Smart, funny when he feels safe enough to be funny. Kind to other kids, especially the ones who seem lonely or left out. He notices people you know, really sees them. Maybe because he knows what it's like to hurt, to need someone to see you." Dominic was crying again. Seemed like all he did now was cry, 4 years of tears stored up and finally released. Does he remember me at all?" Maria hesitated. "Some. He remembers music. He talks about someone playing for him when he was little, someone who made beautiful sounds. He remembers feeling safe with that person. He doesn't remember a name or a face clearly, he was so young. But he remembers the feeling. And when he plays violin now, sometimes he says it feels like talking to someone far away. Like the music is a connection to something he lost." "He plays violin," Dominic said. And it wasn't a question. Of course, Caleb played. Music was in his blood, both sides inherited talent that couldn't be suppressed, even by trauma. "Started 2 years ago," Maria said. "His teacher says he's exceptionally gifted, has perfect pitch plays by ear, learns pieces faster than kids twice his age. It's like the violin is the one place where all that sadness goes and transforms into something beautiful. Just like his father Dominic thought. Just like both his parents. Art as survival, as communication, as the thing that makes unbearable life bearable. They talked for another hour. About school, Caleb was good at science, struggled with reading comprehension because his attention would drift. About friends, he had a few close ones, kids who'd stuck with him through the hard times. About his interests, space dinosaurs, cooking shows, anything where the world made logical sense and followed predictable rules. He needs structure, Maria explained. Needs to know what's happening when, why. Surprises are hard for him. Changes are hard. Which is why. She trailed off, but they both knew what she wasn't saying. Which is why this his dead father suddenly alive was going to be incredibly difficult, no matter how joyful the underlying truth. At 2 o'clock, Maria's phone rang. Rebecca calling from the school parking lot. "We're going in now," she said. "Jessica's with me. We'll call you as soon as we've talked to him." How long, Dominic asked when Maria relayed this. "However long it takes," Maria said gently. "There's no rushing this, Dominic. He needs to process, needs to decide what he wants. We have to let him control what happens next." Dominic nodded, understanding intellectually, even as every cell in his body screamed to run to the school, to burst into whatever room they had his son in, to hold Caleb and never let go. But he couldn't. Because this wasn't about him. It was about a 9-year-old boy who'd been through hell and deserved to have some agency, some control, some say in what happened to his life. So he waited. Sat at the kitchen table with Maria drinking coffee, watching the clock, praying to a God he still wasn't sure he believed in. At Lincoln Elementary, Rebecca and Jessica were being led down the hallway by Principal Morrison, a black woman in her 60s who'd been with the school for 30 years. She'd been briefed on the situation, had agreed immediately to pull Caleb from class, had offered the counselor's office as a private space. "This is unprecedented," Principal Morrison said as they walked. "I've never heard of anything like this. How do we even begin to tell a child his dead parent is alive?" "Very carefully," Rebecca said. "And honestly, kids can handle the truth if you give it to them straight. It's the lies and the secrets that mess them up." They reached the 4th grade classroom. Through the window in the door, they could see Caleb at his desk in the 2nd row. Dark hair. Alicia's eyes focused on whatever assignment the teacher had given. Just a normal kid on a normal Tuesday. Except nothing was normal anymore. Nothing would ever be normal again. Principal Morrison knocked, entered, spoke quietly to the teacher. The teacher's eyes widened. She'd obviously been warned something unusual was happening. Then she nodded. "Caleb," she said, trying to keep her voice casual and failing. "Can you come here, please?" Caleb looked up. Saw the principal, saw Jessica, his sister. He thought of her that way. Saw a stranger in professional clothes. His face immediately closed off body language, shifting into defensive mode. He'd learned young that unexpected disruptions meant bad news. People pulling you from class meant someone died, or got hurt, or something terrible happened. He gathered his things slowly, methodically, the way he did when he was trying to control his anxiety. Walked to the door, looked up at Jessica with eyes that asked, "What's wrong? What happened? Please tell me everyone's okay. Everyone's fine," Jessica said immediately, reading his fear. "I promise, everyone in our family is safe and healthy. But we need to talk to you about something. Something important and surprising, but not bad." "Okay," Caleb nodded. Not believing her. Adults always said things weren't bad right before telling you something terrible, but following anyway because what choice did he have? They walked to the counselor's office. Small room, comfortable chairs, posters on the walls about feelings and friendship and growth mindsets. Caleb had been here before many times for his therapy sessions. He sat in his usual chair, hands clasped in his lap, waiting. Rebecca sat across from him. Jessica beside him, one hand on his shoulder. Principal Morrison stood by the door, ready to leave if she wasn't needed, but available if she was. Caleb Rebecca began, and her voice was gentle, the tone she'd perfected over 20 years of delivering difficult news to children. My name is Rebecca Foster. I'm a social worker. Do you know what that means? Caleb nodded. You help kids who need help. That's right. And I'm here today because I have some information about your family, about your first family before you came to live with Jessica and her parents. Do you remember them? Your first mom and dad. Caleb's face went blank, the protective shutdown he'd learned. They died, he said, voice flat. In the shooting. I was there, I remember. I know you were, Rebecca said. And you're right, your mother, Alicia, she did die that day. I'm so sorry. She loved you very much, and what happened was terrible and unfair. Okay, Caleb said, clearly confused about why they were telling him something he already knew. Rebecca took a breath. There was no easy way to say this. No gentle approach that would make it less shocking. But Caleb, your father, Dominic, he didn't die. He was hurt, but he survived. And he's alive. He's been alive this whole time. Silence. Caleb stared at her face, completely still processing. 10 seconds passed. 20. Then, that's not true. It is true, Rebecca said gently. No. Caleb shook his head, more emphatic now. They told me, after the hospital, they said both my parents died. They said I didn't have any family, that's why I had to go to foster care. That's why Jessica's family adopted me. They said my dad was dead. I know that's what you were told, Rebecca said. And the people who told you that believed it was true. But there was a mistake. Your father was in this hospital, and when he woke up, he was told you had died. He believed you were gone. And he had a very hard time after that. He got sick and sad and lost. He ended up living on the streets homeless, and no one could find him to tell him the truth. Caleb was shaking his head continuously now, a physical rejection of the information. No, you're lying. Why are you lying to me? Jessica squeezed his shoulder. Caleb, sweetie, it's true. I saw him today. Your dad. He's alive and he's been looking for you, and stop it! Caleb pulled away from her, stood up, backed into the corner of the room. Stop lying. My dad is dead. He's been dead for 4 years. You can't just say he's alive now. That's not how it works. His breathing was coming fast. Panic attack building. Rebecca recognized the signs she'd seen this before with traumatized kids. The way new information that contradicts their established reality can trigger complete dysregulation. Caleb, I need you to breathe, she said calmly. In through your nose, out through your mouth, like we practiced. Can you do that for me? But Caleb wasn't listening. His mind was racing 4 years of carefully constructed reality crumbling. If his dad was alive, that meant… what? That someone had lied, that he'd spent 4 years grieving for no reason, that he'd started a new life, taken a new last name called other people, mom and dad, when his real father was out there somewhere. Where is he? Caleb asked suddenly, voice sharp with anger. If he's alive, where has he been? Why didn't he find me? Why did he leave me alone for 4 years? He didn't know you were alive, Jessica said. He thought you had died. He was looking for you in heaven, not on earth. That's stupid, Caleb said, and he was crying now, angry tears. That's the stupidest thing I ever heard. How could he not know? How could nobody tell him? Why didn't he try harder to find out? These were fair questions. Questions without good answers. Because the truth that systems fail, that hospitals make mistakes, that homeless people become invisible to society wasn't comforting, wasn't satisfying, wasn't enough to explain 4 years of unnecessary separation. "He wants to see you," Rebecca said. "He's waiting right now at your house, at the Martinez house. If you want to meet him, we can go there, but only if you want to. This is your choice, Caleb. No one is going to force you." Caleb slid down the wall, sat on the floor, knees pulled to his chest. His whole body was trembling. "I don't know him," he said quietly. "I was 4. I barely remember. What if he's not nice? What if he's different now? What if he doesn't like me anymore? He loves you," Jessica said, sitting down on the floor beside him. "I talked to him, Caleb. He's been living on the streets for 4 years because he was so sad that he thought you died. And when he found out you were alive, he cried. He cried because he was so happy. He loves you so much." "Then why did he play music?" Caleb asked, and his voice was small, confused. Jessica said he was playing viola at the train station. If he was so sad, why was he playing music? "We're not supposed to play music when we're sad." Jessica didn't know how to answer that. Didn't know how to explain that sometimes music is the only way to express unbearable emotion, that art can be both a symptom of suffering and a path through it. But apparently Caleb didn't need an answer. He was working it out himself, thinking through it in that careful, logical way he had. He was playing the sad away, Caleb said slowly. "Like when I play violin, and it makes me feel better." He was trying to make the sad smaller. "Yes," Jessica said, relieved. "Exactly like that." Caleb was quiet for a long time. Rebecca and Jessica waited, letting him process, letting him arrive at his own decision. Outside, they could hear the normal sounds of school kids in the hallway, teachers' voices, a bell ringing. Life continuing as normal for everyone else, while Caleb's world reassembled itself into a completely new configuration. Finally, Caleb looked up. His face was blotchy from crying, but his eyes were clear. "Is he nice?" he asked. "My dad. Is he nice or is he scary?" "He's nice," Jessica said. "He's gentle and kind, and he's very sorry he wasn't there for you. He's different from how he was before. He's been through hard things too. But he's still your dad, and he wants a chance to be your dad again if you'll let him." Another long silence. Then, "Okay, I'll meet him. But you have to stay with me, Jessica, the whole time." "Promise, I promise," Jessica said. "I'm not going anywhere." They stood up. Principal Morrison had tears streaming down her face. She'd been silent this whole time, but she'd heard everything, had witnessed this impossible moment. She opened the door for them, squeezed Caleb's shoulder as he passed. "You're very brave," she whispered. The drive to the Martinez house took 15 minutes. Caleb sat in the back seat, silent, staring out the window. Jessica held his hand. Rebecca drove carefully, taking her time, giving Caleb every possible second to prepare for what was about to happen. At the house, Maria was watching from the window. She saw the car pull up, saw Caleb get out, and her heart broke for her boy, because her boy had been for 3 years, who was about to meet his biological father and potentially have everything change again. Inside, Dominic stood in the living room, hands shaking so badly he had to clasp them together. He heard the car door, heard footsteps on the walkway, heard the front door opening, and then after 4 years of grief and loss, and believing his son was dead, after 4 years of wanting to die himself, after this morning that had started like any other homeless morning, and turned into a miracle, he still couldn't fully believe, after all, that Dominic Walker saw his son. Caleb stood in the doorway, Jessica's hand in his, looking smaller and more fragile than Dominic remembered, but also older, more grown. He had Alicia's eyes, God, those eyes exactly like hers. He had Dominic's nose, his jawline the same slight crook in his left eyebrow. He was skinny the way 9-year-old boys are, all elbows and knees. He was wearing a t-shirt with a dinosaur on it and jeans with holes in the knees. He looked terrified and brave and real and alive and here. Dominic couldn't move, couldn't speak, could only stare at this miracle, this impossible gift. This son who was supposed to be dead but wasn't, who'd been alive all along, who'd been growing and learning and existing in the same city while Dominic had been on the streets believing the universe was cruel and meaningless. Caleb stared back, studying Dominic with those serious eyes trying to reconcile the homeless man in borrowed clothes with his scattered memories of his father from 5 years ago. The moment stretched. Everyone in the room held their breath. And then Caleb spoke his voice, small but clear, Dad, one word. A question, an accusation, a hope, a beginning. And Dominic, broken and homeless, and 4 years removed from being anyone's father, answered, with the only words that mattered. "I'm here, Caleb. I'm here. I'm so sorry I wasn't before, but I'm here now. I'm here." The word Dad hung in the air like a musical note, resonating impossible to unhear once spoken. Caleb stood frozen, as if surprised he'd said it, as if the word had escaped without permission. His hand tightened in Jessica's, his lifeline to the family he knew, the safety he'd built over 3 years. Dominic took one step forward, just one. Didn't want to overwhelm his son, didn't want to be too much too fast. But God, every cell in his body was screaming to run across the room, to grab Caleb, to hold him and never let go. "Can I?" Dominic's voice broke. He cleared his throat, tried again. "Can I come closer? Or would you rather I stay here?" Caleb considered this, his face serious in that way children get when they're trying to make sense of adult-sized emotions. "You can come closer," he said finally. "But not too close. Not yet." Dominic nodded, took 2 more steps. Now he was maybe 8 feet from his son instead of 15. Close enough to see the details, the small scar on Caleb's chin that hadn't been there before, the way he chewed his lower lip when he was nervous, just like Alicia used to. Close enough to see that this was really him, really Caleb, Olive, and breathing and real. "You look different," Caleb said. "From before. I remember you had shorter hair, and you didn't have a beard, and your face was—" He trailed off, didn't finish. But they all knew what he meant. "Your face was happier. Your face didn't look like it had been broken and badly repaired." "I know," Dominic said. "I'm different now. Life was hard. After what happened, I got lost for a while. But I'm trying to find my way back." Caleb nodded like this made sense to him. Maybe it did. He understood being lost, understood trauma, understood that people could break. "Jessica said you were living outside. On the street." "Yes," Dominic said. "I was homeless for 4 years." "Why?" Caleb asked. "Where was your house?" How to explain to a 9-year-old about grief, so profound it destroys your ability to function, about addiction and mental illness, and the way society discards people who can't hold it together. "I was very, very sad," Dominic said slowly. "So sad that I couldn't take care of myself. Couldn't work, or keep a house, or do normal things. The sadness took over everything." "Because you thought I died," Caleb said. "Yes. And because Mom really did die." "Yes." Caleb was quiet for a moment, processing this. "I was sad too," he said finally. "For a long time. I had to talk to a therapist every week. Sometimes I still have bad dreams." "I'm sorry," Dominic said, and his voice was thick with emotion. "I'm so sorry I wasn't there to help you. I should have been there. I'm your dad. I was supposed to protect you and help you, and I didn't, and I'm so sorry. It wasn't your fault," Caleb said. "You thought I was dead. That's what Jessica said. You didn't know." Such simple absolution from a child who'd been through hell. Dominic's knees nearly buckled with the weight of it. But I should have tried harder to find out. Should have checked, should have made sure. I believed what they told me, and I didn't question it. I believed what they told me too, Caleb pointed out. About you being dead. So I guess we both believed wrong things. The logic was flawless, the kind of clear-eyed reasoning children sometimes have before they learn to complicate everything with adult guilt and nuance. We both believed wrong things, as if that explained 4 years of suffering, as if it made everything okay. It didn't, of course, but it was something. Rebecca stepped forward slightly. "Caleb, do you have questions for your dad? Things you want to know?" Caleb nodded. "Why were you playing music this morning at the train station?" Dominic considered the question. "I hadn't played in 4 years, since the shooting. It hurt too much. Music reminded me of your mom and of you and of everything I'd lost. But this morning I saw a viola someone had left behind, and something in me. I needed to play, needed to remember what it felt like to make something beautiful. Does that make sense?" "Yes," Caleb said immediately. "When I play violin, it's like that. Like I'm talking to people who aren't here anymore. Like the music goes somewhere else, and maybe they can hear it." Dominic's breath caught. This child his child understood, had inherited not just the technical talent, but also the deeper truth about what music could be, what it could do. "That's exactly right," he said. "That's exactly what it's like." "Do you still remember how to play good?" Caleb asked. "Or did you forget because you didn't practice for a long time?" I still remember," Dominic said. "Your body doesn't forget even when your mind tries to. It's like riding a bike. The skills are still there, waiting." "I play violin," Caleb said, and there was a hint of pride in his voice. "I started 2 years ago. My teacher says I'm really good for my age." I heard Dominic said, smiling through tears. "Your mom would be so proud of you. She loved music more than almost anything. Except you. She loved you most of all." Caleb's face crumpled slightly at the mention of Alicia. "I don't remember her very much," he admitted. "Just pieces. I remember she had long hair, and she sang to me, and she smelled like flowers, but I can't remember her face clearly anymore. It makes me sad that I'm forgetting." "I can help with that," Maria said quietly from where she'd been standing by the kitchen doorway. She disappeared for a moment, returned with a small photo album. "We have pictures from before. Social services gave them to us when you came to live with us. We've been waiting until you were ready to look at them." She handed the album to Caleb, who took it carefully like it was fragile. He opened it slowly. The first photo was a professional family portrait, Dominic, Alicia, and a very small Caleb, maybe 2 years old. Everyone smiling, happy, frozen in a moment before the world ended. Caleb stared at the photo for a long time. "You both look so happy," he said. "We were," Dominic said. "We were so happy. You made us happier than we'd ever been." Caleb turned the pages. More photos. Birthday parties. Christmas mornings. Casual snapshots of daily life. Alicia holding baby Caleb. Dominic teaching toddler Caleb to clap to music. All 3 of them at a park at the beach at home. A life documented, preserved proof that it had existed, even though it felt like a dream now. "Can I keep these?" Caleb asked. Of course, Maria said. They're yours. They've always been yours. Caleb closed the album, held it against his chest. He looked at Dominic with an expression that was heartbreaking in its mixture of hope and fear. What happens now? He asked. Do I have to leave? Do I have to go live with you instead of Jessica's family? The question everyone had been avoiding. The logistical nightmare underneath the emotional reunion. Legally, the Martinez family had adopted Caleb. They were his legal guardians. But morally, emotionally, biologically, Dominic was his father. No, Dominic said immediately. No, you don't have to leave. You don't have to do anything you don't want to do. This family… He gestured to include Maria and Jessica. They've been taking care of you when I couldn't. They love you. You love them. That doesn't have to change. But you're my dad, Caleb said, confused. I am, Dominic agreed. And I want to be part of your life if you'll let me. But we'll figure it out together. Slowly, in a way that feels okay for you. There's no rush, no pressure. Okay, Caleb nodded, some of the tension leaving his small shoulders. Okay, Rebecca spoke up. There's a lot to work through legally. Visitation rights, custody arrangements. What's in Caleb's best interest? It'll take time. But the important thing is that everyone here, she looked at Dominic, at Maria, at Jessica, everyone wants what's best for Caleb. Right nods all around. Yes, of course. Caleb first, always. Can I ask you something? Caleb said to Dominic. Anything. Do you want to hear me play violin? I'm pretty good. And I think maybe you'd like it. Dominic's vision blurred with tears again. I would love that more than anything in the world. Caleb looked at Maria, asking permission silently. She nodded, smiling through her own tears. Go get your violin, mijo. Caleb ran upstairs, the first quick, childlike movement since this whole impossible day had started. They could hear him in his room opening his case, taking out his instrument. Jessica moved closer to Dominic. He's a good kid, she said quietly. The best kid. We love him like he's our own blood. I know, Dominic said. I can see it. The way you all look at him. The way he feels safe here. Thank you doesn't even begin to cover it, but thank you. We're not trying to replace you, Jessica said. We never wanted to erase his past or make him forget his first family. We just wanted to give him a future, a chance to be okay again. You did, Dominic said. You did exactly that. Caleb came back downstairs, violin in hand. It was a half-size instrument, appropriate for a 9-year-old, nothing fancy, but well-maintained. He positioned himself in the middle of the living room, suddenly shy now that everyone was watching. What should I play? He asked. Whatever you want, Dominic said. Something you love. Caleb thought for a moment, then lifted the violin to his shoulder. His position was good, someone had taught him well. His left hand found the fingerboard, his right hand held the bow with proper technique. And then he began to play. The piece was simple, probably something from his lesson book. But he played it beautifully, in tune with good tone, with the kind of musicality that can't be taught, only inherited or developed through years of dedicated practice. For a 9-year-old, it was exceptional. For Dominic, sitting in this stranger's living room, watching his son create beauty with sound, it was a miracle. When Caleb finished, he lowered the violin and looked at Dominic anxiously. Was it okay? It was perfect, Dominic said, and he was crying openly now, not even trying to hide it. You're amazing, Caleb. You have so much talent. Your mom and I, we always hoped you'd love music. And you do. You really do. Caleb smiled, the first real, full smile Dominic had seen from him. Maybe someday we could play together, he said tentatively. You and me, viola and violin. I would love that, Dominic said. I would love that so much. The afternoon wore on. Slowly, carefully, they began the process of rebuilding. Not what had been lost that was gone, could never be recovered, but something new, something different. A relationship between a father and son who'd both been to hell and somehow survived it, who'd found each other against impossible odds, who had a chance now to figure out what family could mean in this strange new configuration. They talked. Caleb asked questions about the shooting, about what Dominic remembered, about life on the streets, about everything. Dominic answered honestly but gently, age-appropriate truth, without unnecessary detail. They looked at more photos together. They talked about Alicia keeping her memory alive, making sure Caleb understood how much his mother had loved him. At one point, Caleb asked, "Are you going to be homeless still?" "No," Dominic said. "People have been helping. There's money being raised, I guess, and I'm going to get help, therapy, housing assistance, everything I need to get stable. Because I want to be the kind of dad you deserve. I want to be someone you can count on." "Okay," Caleb said. Good. So simple for him. No judgment about the years of addiction and homelessness. Just, "Okay, good, glad you're fixing it." Children's capacity for forgiveness, for forward motion, was humbling. By early evening, Caleb was getting tired, emotionally exhausted by the biggest day of his young life. He was starting to lean against Jessica, his 9-year-old body remembering it was time for homework and dinner and normal routine. "I should go," Dominic said. "Let you have your evening. Be normal for a while." "Where will you go?" Caleb asked suddenly, worried. "I have a place," Dominic assured him, though he didn't really. He'd figure it out. A shelter maybe, or Rebecca had mentioned something about temporary housing. Somewhere. Anywhere. It didn't matter. What mattered was that he knew where Caleb was, that he'd see him again, that they had time now to rebuild. "Can you come back tomorrow?" Caleb asked. Dominic looked at Maria, asking permission. She nodded. "Come for dinner," she said. "We eat at 6. Nothing fancy, just family dinner. But you're welcome." "I'll be here," Dominic promised. He stood to leave, then hesitated. "Caleb, would it be okay if I hugged you? Just once?" Caleb considered this, then nodded. He walked over to Dominic, and Dominic knelt down so they were eye to eye. Then carefully, gently, Dominic pulled his son into his arms for the first time in 4 years. Caleb was bigger now, heavier, more solid, but he still fit perfectly in Dominic's embrace, still felt like he belonged there. Dominic closed his eyes, breathing in the smell of his son, kid sweat and shampoo, and something indefinably Caleb. He memorized the feeling, the weight, the reality of this impossible moment. "I love you," Dominic whispered. "I never stopped loving you, not for 1 second of all those years." "I love you too, Dad," Caleb whispered back. And just like that, the title that had been taken from Dominic 4 years ago was returned. Dad. Father. The most important role he'd ever have. They held each other for a long moment, and everyone else in the room politely looked away, giving them privacy in the middle of the crowded living room. When they finally pulled apart, both were crying, but they were also smiling. Beginning and ending, grief and joy, loss and recovery, all of it tangled together in a way that felt perfectly messily human. Dominic left the Martinez house as the sun was setting. Thomas, the security guard, was waiting in his car to give Dominic a ride. He'd volunteered to help coordinate housing, and services had made himself Dominic's unofficial guardian. But before getting in the car, Dominic stood on the sidewalk for a moment, looking back at the small house where his son lived. Light glowed in the windows. He could see movement inside the family going about their evening. Caleb probably doing homework or getting ready for bed. Normal life, continuing resilient. His son was in there. Alive. Happy or at least working toward happiness. Safe. Loved. It wasn't the life Dominic had planned. It wasn't the family he'd imagined. But it was real, and it was possible, and for the first time in 4 years, Dominic Walker believed that maybe, just maybe, he had a reason to keep living. The next few weeks moved in a blur of logistics and emotions. Rebecca worked tirelessly to navigate the legal complexities Dominic's rights as a biological father, who'd been presumed dead the Martinez family's legal adoption, what served Caleb's best interests. Lawyers got involved, family court judges, mediators who specialized in unusual custody situations. But underneath all the legal machinery, something simpler and more profound was happening. A father and son were getting to know each other again. Dominic came to the Martinez house every day. At first for just an hour or two, carefully supervised, everyone walking on eggshells. But gradually, as Caleb relaxed and Dominic proved himself reliable, the visits grew longer. Dinner became routine. Then Dominic would stay to help with homework. Then they'd play music together. Caleb on violin, Dominic on a viola that a local music shop had donated when they'd heard his story. The viral videos had consequences Dominic hadn't anticipated. The GoFundMe had reached $500,000. Enough to get him into stable housing, a small apartment not far from the Martinez house. Enough for therapy, for medical care, for all the treatments he'd needed for years but couldn't access. Enough to start over, to rebuild, to become the father Caleb deserved. The Metropolitan Opera reached out. They wanted him back, they said. His position had been filled, obviously, but they could create something: principal, substitute, section player, anything. Dominic declined. He wasn't ready to return to that world yet. Maybe someday, but not now. Now his focus needed to be on healing, on Caleb, on putting one foot in front of the other without relapsing into the darkness that had consumed him for 4 years. Instead, he started teaching. Private viola lessons to kids who couldn't afford expensive instructors. Music therapy at a homeless shelter, using his own experience to connect with people who'd lost everything. It wasn't Carnegie Hall. It wasn't the Met. But it was meaningful in a way those positions had never been. 6 weeks after their reunion on a Saturday afternoon in late January, something shifted. Caleb had been practicing violin, getting frustrated with a difficult passage. Dominic was there, had been helping, and Caleb suddenly threw his bow down, not violently, but with a 9-year-old's dramatic exasperation. "I can't do it," Caleb said. "It's too hard, you can," Dominic said calmly. "You're just tired. Take a break." "I don't want a break. I want to be good at this." "You are good at this. Not good enough." Caleb's voice was rising, the frustration morphing into something bigger. "I want to be as good as you were. As good as Mom was. But I'm not. And I never will be, because I started too late. And I don't remember enough, and they're dead. And you weren't there. And everything is wrong." And there it was. 6 weeks of being good, being careful, being the well-behaved, traumatized child who was handling his father's resurrection with impossible grace. All of it cracking the real feelings, finally spilling out. Dominic didn't panic, didn't try to fix it or smooth it over. He just sat down on the floor where he'd been standing, making himself level with his son. "You're right," he said. "Everything is wrong. It's all wrong. Your mom should be here, and I should have been there, and you shouldn't have had to go through any of this." Caleb stared at him, surprised by the agreement. "And you know what else?" Dominic continued. "You're allowed to be angry about it. Angry at me, angry at the universe, angry at whoever you need to be angry at. This whole thing, it's terrible and unfair, and you have every right to be furious." "I am angry," Caleb said, and he was crying now. "I'm so angry, at everything. At the man who shot the gun, at the hospital for making mistakes, at you for not finding me sooner, at Mom for dying, at me for not remembering enough. I'm angry all the time, and I'm tired of being angry. I know, Dominic said. I know, buddy. I'm angry too. Then why aren't you yelling? Caleb demanded. Why aren't you mad? Why are you always so calm and nice now? Because I already did the yelling part, Dominic said honestly. For 4 years, I was nothing but anger. It didn't help. It didn't bring anyone back. It just made everything worse. So now I'm trying something different. I'm trying to be calm and nice, because maybe that will help us both heal. But that doesn't mean I'm not angry inside. I am. I'm furious at the world for what it took from us. Caleb stood there, tears streaming down his face, violin forgotten on the floor beside him. And then he did something he hadn't done yet in all these weeks of careful, supervised visits. He ran to Dominic and threw himself into his father's arms, sobbing all the grief and rage and confusion of 4 impossible years, finally finding release. Dominic held him, rocked him, let him cry. Didn't try to stop it or calm it, just held him and murmured, I've got you. I've got you. You're safe. I've got you, over and over like a mantra. When Caleb finally cried himself out, he stayed in Dominic's arms, hiccuping, exhausted. I'm glad you're alive, he said quietly. Even though I'm angry. I'm still glad you're not dead. I'm glad you're alive too, Dominic said. So glad. They sat there on the floor for a long time. Maria, who'd heard the commotion and come to check, saw them and quietly backed away, leaving them to this moment. Some things needed to happen without witnesses. Eventually, Caleb pulled back. Can we play something together? He asked. Not practice stuff, just for fun. What do you want to play? I don't know. Something you know. Something Mom liked. Dominic thought for a moment, then picked up the viola that was now semi-permanently living at the Martinez house. Your mom's favorite piece was the Bach Double Violin Concerto. Do you know it? Caleb nodded. We're learning it in my lessons. I can play the first violin part, sort of. I can adapt the second violin part for viola, Dominic said. Want to try? They positioned themselves instruments ready. Dominic counted them in, and they began to play. It was messy. Caleb was still learning the piece, and Dominic was sight-reading the adapted part. But it was also beautiful. Father and son, viola, and violin creating something together for the first time in 5 years. The music filled the Martinez living room, spilled out into the street, reached up toward whatever heaven might exist where Alicia could hear them. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. It was theirs. And in that moment playing together, they weren't a traumatized homeless man and a damaged child. They were just 2 musicians who loved each other, connected by sound, building something new from the ruins of what had been lost. When they finished, they were both crying again, but smiling too. That was good, Caleb said. That was perfect, Dominic replied. Jessica appeared in the doorway, phone in hand. Sorry to interrupt, she said, but I just got a call from the music teacher at Caleb's school. They're doing a winter concert next month. Students can invite family members to perform with them if they want. Caleb, would you want to invite your dad to play with you? In front of everyone. Caleb looked at Dominic, uncertainty and hope mixed in his expression. Would you do that? Play at my school concert? Of course, Dominic said. I'd be honored, even though everyone will see you and know you were homeless. Some kids might be mean about it. Let them be mean, Dominic said. I'm not ashamed of where I've been. I'm only ashamed I didn't find you sooner. If playing at your school concert means people will see me, really see me, then that's fine. I want to be seen, especially by you. Okay, Caleb said, smiling. Now the idea taking shape and becoming real. Okay, let's do it. We can play the Bach. We'll practice until we're really good. We'll practice until we're amazing, Dominic corrected. And they did. Every day for the next 3 weeks, father and son practiced together. The Bach double adapted for violin, and Viola arranged, so Caleb had the melody more often than not, so it would showcase his talent, while Dominic supported from the harmonic foundation. It was music as relationship, as communication, as the thing that had always connected them, even when they'd been separated by presumed death and impossible circumstances. The night of the concert arrived. Lincoln Elementary's auditorium was packed, parents, grandparents, siblings, friends. The Martinez family sat in the front row, Maria, her husband Roberto, Jessica, and several extended family members who'd come to support Caleb. News crews were there too, having heard about the Union Station reunion and wanting to document the next chapter. But Dominic and Caleb backstage tried to ignore all that. They focused on each other, on the music, on what they were about to do. Nervous Dominic asked. "Yeah," Caleb admitted. "What if I mess up, then you mess up? It's not about perfection. It's about playing together, about making something beautiful with someone you love. That's all it's ever about." They walked onto the stage together. The audience applauded, but it faded quickly as everyone realized what they were about to witness. This wasn't just a school concert performance. This was a father and son who'd found each other against impossible odds, who'd survived trauma that would have destroyed most people who were choosing to create beauty in a world that had shown them mostly ugliness. Dominic and Caleb positioned themselves center stage, lifted their instruments, made eye contact, Dominic nodding to count them in, and then they played. The Bach soared through the auditorium, violin and viola weaving around each other, harmonizing and diverging and coming back together in the way the piece demanded. Caleb played beautifully, a few small mistakes, but nothing that mattered. His tone, pure, and his musicality far beyond his years. Dominic supported him perfectly, making his sun shine, making sure every listener knew they were hearing something special. In the audience, Maria sobbed quietly. Jessica recorded on her phone, crying too. Rebecca Foster, who'd been invited, sat in the back row thinking about all the broken systems and failed policies and impossible chances that had somehow miraculously led to this moment. Thomas Chen, the security guard, had come as well, watching the man he'd first seen as just another homeless person in Union Station, now playing on stage with his son, both of them whole, or at least working toward wholeness. The piece built to its climax, both instruments in perfect unity, creating harmonies that spoke of connection, of love, of family, in all its complicated, beautiful, broken forms. And then the final notes held long, fading into silence. The audience erupted. Standing ovation, thunderous applause, people crying and cheering and witnessing something they'd remember for the rest of their lives. Not just a good performance, a resurrection, a miracle, proof that even after losing everything, even after the worst things imaginable happen, there can still be beauty, there can still be love, there can still be hope. Dominic and Caleb lowered their instruments, looked at each other, and smiled. Then Caleb did something unexpected. He turned to the audience and spoke into the microphone the school had set up for introductions. "This is my dad," he said, his young voice clear and proud. He was lost for a long time, but now he's found. And I'm really, really glad. More applause, more tears. Dominic put his arm around his son's shoulders, and they stood there together, taking in the moment, the celebration, the acknowledgement of their impossible journey. Later, after the concert, after the congratulations and the photos and the news interviews they'd agreed to do, the Martinez family and Dominic gathered at their house. It was late, Caleb should have been in bed, but no one wanted this day to end. They sat in the living room, Caleb curled up against Dominic on the couch, tired but happy. The adults talked quietly about logistics. The custody arrangement they'd finally worked out, where the Martinez family would maintain legal guardianship But Dominic would have extensive visitation rights that would increase as he proved his stability. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't traditional, but it worked for their strange, beautiful, blended family. At some point, Caleb fell asleep, his head on Dominic's chest, breathing deep and even. Dominic looked down at his son, felt the weight of him, the warmth, the absolute reality of this child who should have been dead but wasn't, and felt something he hadn't felt in 4 years. Contentment. Not happiness that was still too complex, too far away, but contentment. The sense that right now, in this moment, everything was exactly as it should be. "Thank you," he said quietly to Maria and Roberto, to Jessica, to everyone who'd made this possible. For everything. For him. For giving him a home and a family and love when I couldn't. For sharing him with me now. Just thank you. "He's ours to share," Maria said simply. Family isn't always about blood. Sometimes it's about who shows up, who does the work, who loves unconditionally. We're all family now. All of us. Together. And that was it. That was the resolution as much as life ever resolves. Not perfect. Not without complications. Not the family any of them had planned for or expected. But real. And full of love. And enough. Enough to keep going. Enough to keep healing. Enough to build a future from the fragments of a shattered past. Enough. 6 months after the Union Station performance that changed everything, Dominic Walker stood in a different train station, this one in Philadelphia, where he'd once studied at Curtis, where he'd once been young and hopeful and believed the world was full of possibility. He was here for a reason. A good reason. The best reason. Beside him stood Caleb now, almost 10 taller and more confident than he'd been half a year ago. They both carried instrument cases, viola, and violin. They were here to perform. The National Homeless Musicians Initiative had organized a benefit concert at Philadelphia's 30th Street Station. A year-long program that would place trained musicians who'd experienced homelessness into teaching positions therapy programs and performance opportunities. The funding had come partially from Dominic's viral story, from the outpouring of donations and support that had followed the videos of his Union Station performance. But this wasn't just about Dominic anymore. This was about creating systems-building infrastructure, making sure other talented people didn't fall through the cracks the way he had. Making sure that homelessness wasn't a death sentence for artistry, for gift, for the things that make life worth living. The concert was in the main hall of 30th Street Station, that grand space with soaring ceilings and marble floors. Hundreds of people had gathered, some who'd been homeless themselves, some who'd come to support the initiative, some who were just curious about the Union Station Miracle Man and wanted to see what happened next. Dominic and Caleb weren't the only performers. There were 10 other musicians, all of whom had experienced homelessness, all of whom had stories as heartbreaking and complex as Dominic's. A jazz trumpeter who'd lost everything to medical debt. A folk singer who'd aged out of foster care and ended up on the streets. A classical pianist who'd fled an abusive relationship with nothing but her talent. Each of them represented a failure of systems, a gap in safety nets a person society had written off. But they also represented resilience, survival, the refusal to let circumstance destroy gift. Before the performance, Dominic spoke to the assembled crowd. He'd gotten better at this over the past month's interviews, speaking engagements, advocacy work. He still wasn't comfortable with the attention, but he'd learned to use his platform for something bigger than himself. 6 months ago, he said, his voice echoing through the station, "I was homeless and hopeless. I'd lost my family, lost my career, lost myself. I thought I'd lost everything. And then I found out my son was alive. And that changed everything. But here's what I've learned since then. Lots of homeless people have families they've lost, have careers they can't access, have talents society has decided don't matter anymore. My story got attention because it was dramatic, because there was a video, because it fit a narrative people wanted to believe in. But there are thousands of other stories just as important, just as heartbreaking, that no one sees. He paused, looking at the other performers at the audience, at Caleb standing beside him. This initiative isn't charity. It's not about feeling good or getting likes on social media. It's about recognizing that every person has value, has gifts, has something to contribute. It's about building systems that catch people before they fall. And when they do fall, because sometimes life is just terrible and unfair and overwhelming, having ways to help them climb back up. Not with pity, not with judgment, but with recognition of their fundamental human dignity and worth. The applause was genuine, sustained. Not the emotional thunder of the Lincoln Elementary concert, but something deeper. Agreement. Commitment. The sound of people willing to do the work to make change, to ensure that Dominic's story wasn't just an anomaly, but the beginning of something systemic. Then the music began. Each performer took their turn. The trumpeter played a haunting version of "What a Wonderful World," the irony and sincerity both present in every note. The folk singer performed an original song about survival, about making it through one more day. The pianist played Chopin, the notes falling like rain, like tears, like everything beautiful that exists alongside suffering. And then it was Dominic and Caleb's turn. They'd chosen carefully what to play. Not the Bach double they'd performed at the school concert that felt too personal, too much theirs. Instead, they'd arranged a medley pieces that represented different parts of their journey. Started with Brahms, the piece Dominic had played that first morning at Union Station. Moved into a lullaby representing the years of Caleb's childhood Dominic had missed. And ended with a piece Caleb had chosen something modern and hopeful, looking forward rather than back. Father and son played together their instruments, speaking the things words couldn't capture. The loss and the finding, the brokenness and the healing, the past that couldn't be changed, and the future that was still being written. In the audience, the Martinez family watched, still Caleb's primary family, still the people he called mom and dad and sister, but now extended to include Dominic in a way that worked for everyone. Rebecca Foster was there documenting this success story for the Family Services Organization, proof that sometimes the system could get it right, even after getting it catastrophically wrong. Thomas Chen attended, still checking in on Dominic weekly, still providing the steady friendship and support that had helped Dominic stay stable. Also in the audience, musicians from the Metropolitan Opera, from the San Francisco Symphony, from orchestras around the country. Some who'd known Dominic in his previous life, some who'd only heard about him after he became famous. They were here partly for support, partly for curiosity, partly because the classical music world had recognized that homelessness and mental health issues affected their community too, that there, but for the grace of God, went any of them. The music swelled father and son in perfect harmony, creating something beautiful in a train station, just like the one where everything had changed. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. Train stations as places of transit, of movement, of going from one place to another, but also as places where people wait, where paths cross, where unexpected encounters can change everything. The final notes rang out. Silence, then applause, Dominic and Caleb lowered their instruments, smiled at each other, and took their bow together. After the concert, there was a reception. Fancy food networking people discussing how to make the initiative sustainable long-term. Dominic engaged when he needed to, but mostly stayed close to Caleb, who was getting overwhelmed by the crowd and the attention. "Can we go outside for a minute?" Caleb asked quietly. They stepped out of the station into the Philadelphia evening. Summer now warmed the city alive with the particular energy of a Friday night. They sat on the steps, people flowing around them, the world continuing its relentless forward motion. "That was good," Caleb said. "The concert. We sounded good together." "We did," Dominic agreed. "Do you think Mom heard?" Caleb asked. "Wherever she is, I do," Dominic said. "I think she hears every time we play. I think music goes everywhere, touches everything, reaches places we can't even imagine." Caleb nodded, satisfied with this answer. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the city. Dad Caleb said eventually, "Yeah, buddy, I'm glad you didn't die. I'm glad the hospital made a mistake. I'm glad we found each other." "Me too," Dominic said, pulling his son close. "Me too." They sat there, as evening turned to night, father and son Viola, and violin players, survivors and healers, and ordinary people living their extraordinary second chance. Around them, the city hummed millions of stories, playing out simultaneously, each person carrying their own losses and hopes and dreams. Somewhere in that city, someone was struggling. Someone was homeless, or grieving, or fighting addiction, or losing hope. Somewhere another story like Dominic's was unfolding. Another family was being torn apart by tragedy or circumstances or systemic failure. But also somewhere in that city, in every city, people were helping. People were showing up. People were refusing to accept that anyone was disposable, that any story was over, that suffering was the inevitable end. The work wasn't done. Would never be done. But it was happening. Person by person, moment by moment, one note at a time. Dominic thought about the homeless man he'd been 6 months ago, sleeping on a bench in Union Station, certain he would die alone and forgotten. He thought about the professional musician he'd been 5 years ago, at the height of his career, believing nothing bad could touch him. He thought about who he was now, somewhere between those two extremes, damaged, but healing, hopeful, but realistic, carrying his losses, but no longer defined solely by them. He was Caleb's father. That was the most important thing, but he was also other things. Now advocate, teacher, survivor, living proof that stories don't end where we think they do, that resurrection is possible, that love in all its complicated, messy, imperfect forms is worth fighting for. "Ready to go back in?" Dominic asked. Caleb nodded. "Ready." They stood, brushed off their clothes, picked up their instrument cases. Together they walked back into the station, back into the noise and light and life. Back into their story, still being written, still unfolding, still full of possibility, despite everything that had tried to destroy it. Behind them, the city continued. Trains arrived and departed. People rushed to catch connections, or said goodbye to loved ones, or stood on platforms waiting for whatever came next. The ordinary magic of life, continuing resilient, refusing to quit. And in Union Station in Chicago, on the bench where Dominic had once slept homeless and hopeless, someone had placed a small plaque. It read, "Here Dominic Walker played viola and found his son. Remember, behind every face is a story. Every person carries hidden symphonies. Look closer, listen deeper. Everyone deserves to be seen." The plaque would stay there for years, a reminder, a memorial, a promise. Some people would read it and remember the viral video, the miracle reunion, the story that had captured the internet for a brief moment. Others would see it and have no idea what it meant, but would be moved by the message anyway. And sometimes, not often, but sometimes someone who was struggling would sit on that bench and read those words and feel a little less alone. Would remember that stories can change, that endings can become beginnings, that even in the darkest moments, there can still be music. The world kept turning. The seasons changed. Dominic and Caleb continued their slow, careful process of rebuilding their relationship. The Martinez family continued to be the family Caleb needed, while Dominic found his place in that constellation. Systems slowly improved, not fixed, never fixed, but better. More programs, more safety nets, more recognition that everyone deserves dignity and care and the chance to use their gifts. It wasn't a fairy tale. There were setbacks and hard days and moments when the grief threatened to overwhelm everything. But there was also joy. There was also love. There was also music. And in the end, that was enough. Not perfect, not without pain, but enough to build a life on, enough to keep going, enough to believe that even after losing everything, even after the world has broken you, even after you've been forgotten and dismissed and left for dead, even after all that, there can still be beauty. There can still be hope. There can still be music. Always, always, there can still be music.